Zoran just came off looking so much better than everyone else there. All right, now we get to do something fun, which is we get to watch the second debate, but we're going to do it in fast motion.
Good evening. Welcome to the final Democratic primary debate in the race for mayor of New York City. I'm Errol Lewis, political anchor for Spectrum News New York 1, and we're coming to you from the Gerald W. Lynch Theater at John Jay College of Criminal Justice, located on the west side of Manhattan. I'm joined by Brian Lehrer of WNYC Gothamist and Katie Honan of the news organization The City. The candidates have been making their pitches to New Yorkers for months now, and we are only hours away from the start of early voting across the 5 boroughs, starting on Saturday.
Over the next 2 hours, you're going to hear from the 7 leading Democratic candidates on their proposals on issues directly affecting the lives of New Yorkers. A reminder that the mayoralty is currently held by Eric Adams, who has withdrawn from the Democratic primary and is running in the November general election as an independent candidate. Tonight's debate is brought to you by the New York City Campaign Finance Board, the city agency that administers the Public Matching Funds program. It's also sponsored by Spectrum News New York 1, WNYC Gothamist, and The City, and Spectrum Noticias. And our co-sponsors are John Jay College of Criminal Justice, the Craig Newmark Graduate School of Journalism at CUNY, the Center for New York City and State Law at New York Law School, and the Museum of the City of New York. And you can watch tonight's debate without a paywall on ny1.com. It's also being broadcast on NYC TV, WNYC Radio, the Spectrum News YouTube page, and C-SPAN, and in Spanish on Spectrum Noticias and YouTube.
The candidates joining us tonight have met a polling or fundraising threshold established by the Campaign Finance Board in order to take part in the debate. In alphabetical order, Adrian Adams is...
So that's what they used to kick Blake out, so Blake couldn't be at this one.
City Council Speaker representing parts of Southeast Queens. Andrew Cuomo previously served as governor of the state of New York.
Ooh.
Brad Lander is the New York City Comptroller.
Whoa, Brad with the spray tan. What happened to you the last 2 weeks? You go on vacation, buddy? Man. He's... I was gonna say something bad. He's no longer trying to run as a white man. That's what I'm seeing here.
Zohran Mamdani is a state assembly member representing parts of Queens.
He's browner than Zohran.
Zelnor Myrie is a state senator representing parts of
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn.
What the hell happened?
Scott Stringer is a former city comptroller and Manhattan borough president. And Whitney Tilson is a former hedge fund manager who helped create Teach for America.
Now for the rules. The rules that you see on your screen right now have been agreed to by all of the candidates. Each candidate will deliver an opening statement of up to 45 seconds. Answers to our questions will generally be limited to 60 seconds, with a chance for rebuttals at the discretion of the moderator. And candidates will have an opportunity to ask one opponent one question during our cross-examination round.
How else do you explain that?
Opening statements. The order was determined by a random drawing this morning.
Also,
so we'll begin with Scott Stringer. Good evening.
Well, good evening. Look, I love New York City.
Fuck them for not having Blake. You'll notice Ramos isn't here either because she dropped out and endorsed Cuomo because she's scum. But yeah, I'm surprised Blake isn't here. That's kind of shitty.
I was born and raised here, and I believe the future of this city can be limitless. But let's face it, people feeling that it's getting tougher to live here. People who built our neighborhoods are leaving the city. Young people who want to lay down roots here do not see enough opportunity. I say enough is enough. We need a mayor who has experience, we need a mayor who has competence, and a mayor who has a vision to build affordable housing, to enact universal child care, to build a public school system so that kids can thrive. I've seen the best of this city in every neighborhood, as controller, as a borough president, as a state legislator. And I know that right now, at this moment, we need somebody who has the ability to make sure this city can rise again, and I'm going to do it.
Okay, next is Zelnor Myrie.
This morning, I was on Flatbush Avenue getting my hair cut so I could be fresh for this debate. And one of my constituents walked in and didn't talk to me about politics. She said, "What are you going to do to fight for immigrants like me and my husband?" I got on the train as I left, and I ran into a mother who said, "What are you going to do to fight to help make our schools world class?" So here's the thing. You're going to hear a lot of promises, a lot of nice and cute things on the stage tonight. But when you put your head to the pillow, you want a mayor that is going to fight to keep your family safe, fight to keep that roof over your head, and fight to give you opportunity.
The camera quality is way
worse. Think about
worse.
every single day.
Can we
and I'm ready
turn
to
up
put the gloves on as the next mayor
here?
to fight to make that a reality.
Okay.
Thank you. Next candidate is Whitney Tilson.
Good evening. I'm Whitney Tilson, and I'm not a politician. I'm a businessman and philanthropist, and I entered this race because I love this city, but right now it's a mess. It's not talent that we lack. We've got the best and brightest, nor money. We spend double that of any other city in the world. It's leadership, and we can't afford amateur hour in City Hall anymore. It is rightly said that
Leadership.
the job of mayor of this complex, enormous city is the second hardest job in the world.
So the problem with New York isn't the system. It's not any of the material conditions. We just need a really smart dude like Tilson here on top of it, you know? If he was around in like the Middle Ages, he'd say, no, let's keep the monarchy. We just need a good king. We just need good leadership with our monarchy, okay? Don't forget about all this democracy stuff. You know, the people are already happy enough. We just need a good leader on top of it. Okay.
That's why we need a mayor who's experienced, competent, and can get things done, not a social media phenom with cute videos.
He's not experienced or competent. He just said he's not a politician, and he just has Republican policies. And again, he's using his platform here just to attack Zohran, nothing else.
Someone who can balance the budget and make tough choices, not pie-in-the-sky promises that there's no realistic plan to pay for, and someone who will keep us safe by ending chaos, not inciting it, by supporting law enforcement, and by not threatening to defund and dismantle our police. I will be that mayor, and so I'm asking for your vote. Thank you.
Okay, our next candidate is Adrienne Adams.
Thank you very much. My name is Adrienne Adams, and I'm running for mayor because I'm an everyday New Yorker, just like all of you are. When I open my front door, I see what every New Yorker sees, and that is we are in need of a change. I raised 4 children in Southeast Queens in the same home that we live in. I buy my own groceries, so I know the costs of groceries for everyday New Yorkers. Look, as the leader of the city council, leading the most diverse city council in the history, led by...
It's pretty sad that I buy my own groceries as a qualifier now. How many of these people do you think buy their own groceries? Like, the old white guys don't, basically, is what I would assume. The guy with the weird spray tan isn't white now, remember that, so he doesn't count. But the Cuomo, Tilson, and the old guy, I forget, Stringer or something? I don't know.
Women majority, I realize what leadership truly is. I'm already doing the
Who
job.
doesn't buy their own groceries here? This is what I'm trying to establish.
Now in the middle
Definitely
of negotiating
Cuomo.
my 4th city budget. I continue to lead and step in where our current mayor has not, where we have fought through the city council budget cuts. We have saved public libraries and pre-K. I'm Adrienne Adams, already doing the job, asking you to rank me number 1 to be the first woman mayor of the city of New York.
Next candidate is Brad Lander.
If you watched last week's debate, you already know I'm not the flashiest candidate in this race. I don't have a famous father. I'm not the best at TikTok. My daughter's here. All her videos do better than mine. But I love this city. I believe in its future, and I know how to make government work better. As controller, I've saved taxpayers over $2 billion, canceled corrupt contracts, managed the pension funds to record highs. I've built or saved over 50,000 affordable homes. As mayor, I'll deliver 500,000 more. That's why today, the New York Times opinion panel said I'm the best choice for mayor. I've got the public integrity that New Yorkers
He looks so brown, they're gonna start asking him questions about Israel.
deserve, the progressive values that New Yorkers share, and the management chops to deliver on them.
Next is Zohran Mamdani.
My name is Assemblymember Zohran Mamdani, and I am running to make the city affordable. I'll freeze the rent for millions of tenants, make buses fast and free, and deliver universal childcare. And before you ask, I'll pay for it by taxing the rich. The same billionaires who put Donald Trump back in the White House, the same ones who are funding Andrew Cuomo's campaign. Like many New Yorkers, I wasn't born in this country, but I grew up in this city, and it's one that we're in danger of losing. We're under attack from authoritarianism from the outside and an affordability crisis from the inside. Yet if you turned on your television 20 years ago, you'd have heard the same tired, failed policies you'll hear from politicians tonight. It's time for a new generation of leadership. And that's exactly what my campaign is building. A movement of more than 36,000 volunteers who have knocked on nearly 1 million doors and left us just 2 points away from City Hall. So join us, and let's win a New York you can afford.
Next is Andrew Cuomo.
Wow, good. Yeah, clap.
Thank you all very much for having me here today. I do have a very famous parent who I'm very proud of, Matilda Cuomo, and I hope she's watching.
Yeah, good one.
Everyone has a plan.
Good one.
Heard. Everyone always has a plan. That's always the way. But the question for tonight is, who has the ability to get the job done? That's really the question. Who can build housing? I built housing across the nation as HUD secretary. I built LaGuardia.
Dude, stop saying that. There's a nationwide housing crisis. Stop bragging about your time as housing and urban development secretary. You obviously did a bad job. Don't take credit for that. These people just think they can fail up and just think that like having been in a position is like an automatic qualifier. Like, it's crazy.
Airport, Kosciuszko Bridge, 2nd Avenue subway, and more. Who can do public safety? While my colleagues were defunding the police, I was adding more police. Who can manage the city? I manage the state that has double the budget of New York City. And who can take on Donald Trump? That is the big question. And he sent troops into cities all across this country, but he never sent them into New York when I was there, and he never will when I am mayor. A job looks easy when you haven't done it. Experience matters. I will get the job done. I will work for you 24/7.
Thank you for your opening statements, candidates. Mr. Cuomo, many New Yorkers are concerned about what's happening in Los Angeles. Workplace immigration raids and deportations, protests with some violence, the president's deployment of the National Guard and the Marines over the objection of the governor and the mayor. The Trump aide Stephen Miller said the mayor has no say. If you were mayor of New York right now, how would you handle this situation if something like that happened here?
Yeah, we had this situation before, right? This is not a case of first impression. President Trump did this and Trump won. He did it a number of times. He sent troops into cities all across the country. This is him being macho authoritarianism. He's the commander-in-chief. He never sent them into New York because I said to him, you better never send troops into New York. We don't need them. It would be a hostile act. It would be a problem. Right now, in this situation, we're going to protect our immigrants. This is a sanctuary city, and we are going to defend the laws of the sanctuary city. We have an NYPD that is the largest police force in the United States of America. Donald Trump only picks fights that he can win. He cannot win a fight with me as mayor of New York.
Mr. Mamdani, any contrast so far?
You know, what is so troubling to see right now is we also have the NYPD assisting ICE in some of those very missions right here in New York City.
Guys, I think Mamdani might win.
Arrest a pastor who was peacefully observing the arrest of a migrant at Federal Plaza. When I am the mayor, the NYPD will serve public safety of New Yorkers. They will not assist Trump's ICE agents. And furthermore, though Donald Trump may not believe in the law, we have to be clear that we do, and we will in fact bring back our law department to its pre-pandemic staffing levels, 200 additional lawyers, and start to provide lawyers for immigrants who are in deportation cases, because we know that by doing so, we in fact increase their likelihood of coming home to their families in New York City by 11 times. Finally, we can see examples in previous mayoral administrations where the mayor's team, like Steve Banks in the last administration, took every single step they could to ensure that none of the personal information the city had would be turned over to the Trump administration. I would follow that example through all of our agencies.
Thank you. Ms. Adams.
Dude, the crowd loves him. Every time he talks, they applaud. I think I know that's not why I think he's gonna win. It's just adding to my I think he's gonna win, man. I just looked at the comments for this video.
Kind of a follow-up. If the president sees what he thinks is disorder,
all the comments are pro Zohran,
and
it's like this is a no-brainer. Zohran by a mile.
Protecting citizens and property. Why shouldn't he step in? His supporters say that's his responsibility.
We are right now dealing with a lawless president enacting lawless behavior across this entire nation. As one who continues to speak up and out against Donald Trump, currently Donald Trump would like to bring ICE back onto Rikers Island, which has been illegal since the year 2014, through an executive order put forth by the deputy mayor of the city of New York, not the mayor of the city of New York, which is unprecedented. They want to bring ICE back onto Rikers Island. And the person that is endorsing me, she is the baddest AG in the nation. Her name is Tish James. She said, Adrian, if Donald Trump starts to get in your way, sue him. So I am suing him. I am suing.
Really? You asked a lawyer and they said the best idea is to do lawsuits. How surprising.
The mayoral administration and Donald Trump's ICE. We will continue to protect immigrants when I am mayor, just like
she's like, don't worry, guys. I have a strategy. I know a lawyer. Great.
Protecting them as the leader of the city council. We will make sure that Donald
Zohran's like, I have 36,000 volunteers who have knocked on over 1 million doors. And she's like, well, I know Letitia James and she says we should sue.
Trump's ICE obeys the law. We are a sanctuary city. I am here to protect that in the city council. And when I am mayor, I will continue to protect our laws and our immigrants.
Mr. Lander, continuing on the same track, but if the president says the mayor has no say, which seems to be the case because he did deploy the Marines and the National Guard. What would you do? What could you do?
Let me tell you about how the mayor could have a say. Last Thursday and again this morning, I went down to the federal
he's so brown. I can't get. He's so much browner than the last debate. I can't get over
so they could
it.
get out of the federal building and back to their families. One was a couple with kids in our city school system. They were worried they weren't going to see them again. So I stand up to bullies. I don't back down from a fight, and I will make clear that we're going to protect the 40% of New Yorkers who are immigrants, and we're going to keep them safe, and we're going to keep New York City safe. You can de-escalate conflict. What Trump wants is to strike fear and escalate conflict. We're going to make clear we stand up for immigrant New Yorkers, and we de-escalate and keep the peace. I do want to tell you, though, about some immigrant New Yorkers that Andrew Cuomo screwed when he was governor, and we're defending in my office. A couple of hundred
this dude is
multiracial,
multiracial, just like the city of New York.
Subway cars, but cheated out of the prevailing wages and health care that they were due. We're fighting right now to get it back. I stand up to bullies, and I'll stand up to Donald Trump.
Mr. Cuomo, you were named, so we may not be able to do this every time all night, but you were named, so you get a brief response.
I don't know what Mr. Lander is talking about. The MTA contracted for cleaning services. I assume that's what
Look
he's
at his
talking
fucking
about.
neck wrinkles.
The MTA goes through a rigorous contracting
He's
process.
just scary.
They should never have hired illegal immigrants if it is true. But obviously, I had nothing to do with them hiring
I'm sorry, is
anyone.
that what you said? What did you call them?
If anyone was undocumented...
Like, my thing about this dude is this is what he looks like after plastic surgery and makeup and Botox and all that shit. You know what I mean? He looks like an old glove that's ready to be thrown out. They
didn't pay the proper wages. I had nothing to do with it. It would have been done
You didn't
with
pay
the
them the
MTA.
proper wages. You cheated them out of the prevailing wages they were due and the health care they were due.
I didn't contract with them at all. The MTA contracted with them.
Who appoints the chair of the MTA?
Yeah,
I
fucking
see. So every
gargoyle.
contract that the MTA contracts, you want me to be held responsible?
This one, yes, because
You get
a couple of
realistic.
hundred immigrant workers got cheated out of $2.5 million and their health care, and the orders came from on high.
Yeah, so you say. If they did it, that would obviously be wrong. The MTA contracts for $6 billion per year. They have multiple contracts. We have a controller on the state of New York who audits the books. I'm sure he's almost as good as you. And if that happened, he would have found out.
Thankfully, these are prevailing wage workers under city contracts.
But still on President Trump, and Mr. Stringer, you can reply to that if you want. But my moving on question is, his administration has made deep cuts to some programs that directly fund services for New Yorkers. A listener to my radio show asks, how do you propose addressing funding shortfalls for critical services, or which programs will you prioritize above others, assuming you can't make up for all the funding gaps? And please tell everybody how you think your approach would be better than the other candidates.
Sure, Brian. Well, look, I was in Trump 1 when I was the city controller. And during that time period, I didn't let him get this city down. During my time, I managed to divest $4 billion from fossil fuels controller. I divested from gun manufacturers. I divested from private prisons. I put the line in the sand with that guy, and I will do the same as mayor. Look, when you grow up in Washington Heights, everything comes your way. And you understand the only way to deal with as a bully is to draw the line early and fight back. So here's specifically what I'm going to do. First, as mayor, we're going to establish a very, very rainy day fund. We need to get $500 million from the state and $500 million from the city so that we can continue to replenish the money that Donald Trump is taking from us. $80 million is taken in the dead of night. We need to keep the social safety net alive until Hakeem Jeffries becomes the speaker, and we can
Doesn't he
dismantle the
look
Trump
like an
organization.
old
Just
glove that would have like an off smell, and you'd be like, oh, I wanted to keep this thing, but it smells kind of off. I'm gonna have to get rid of it. Like, that's what Cuomo's face says to me.
And that's why I did it.
It's like, that's been out in the sun or the rain too long.
Question about dealing with the defunding of the city.
Yeah, first let me put my lawyer hat on for a second. What Donald Trump is doing right now.
Normally I wouldn't make fun of him, but it's just like, he is besides being terrible, it's just the fact that he's probably had he probably has a beauty consultant who makes like $150,000 a year to like try to make him look better, and he still looks this bad. That's why I'm making fun of him, because like, he is by far the one who's probably put the most money and time into his appearance, and he still looks as awful outside as he is as a person on the inside. It's so fucking bad.
It's flat out unconstitutional, and we got to say that very clearly because they are counting on the chaos
it's like
being
demon
normal.
phrenology.
They're counting on us being relaxed about this approach because we see it in the headlines every day. It is flat out
like if I go to hell
and
when I
should not, as a
die,
city,
I expect to see him there, like
bring
or
it to
someone
him
who
when
looks
he's coming
exactly
after our
like
folks
him.
in this city. So look, I want to hire 50 more lawyers to our law department so we can go on the offensive. And the best way for us to be independent of the Trump cuts is to expand our tax base. That is why I want to deliver 1 million homes over the next 10 years. That's why I want to extend pre-K and
He's
3K
yelling,
to 6
so they
p.m.
adjusted
That's
his
why I want
mic.
universal after school for everyone. This has to be a city where you can raise a family.
Oh,
People
shoe
can
check.
make the choice to stay
Shoe
here.
check.
When they can spend their money in our local
What
economy.
kind of shoes do
we
you
can
have,
create
man?
$18 billion over the next 10 years if we create 1 million homes over the next decade. That is what I plan to do, and I plan to go on offense every single time this bully comes after my city.
Mr. Tilson. Mr. Tilson, you'll get the last word on this. People are talking about standing up to President Trump. Can it ever be smart, in your opinion, to hold your tongue about your worst opinions of him so that New York could possibly get better treatment? Or would that not be effective?
Yes, possibly. There's a grim anniversary coming up on Tuesday. It is the 10-year anniversary of Trump coming down that escalator, spewing hatred and xenophobia. And I've been fighting him tooth and nail every day of those 10 years.
No, you
that
haven't.
Said,
You're backed by the
is
same
a
bankers.
childish bully. And getting into a Twitter war with him needlessly would hurt our city, I think. He tweets a lot of crazy stuff, and most of the time, if you simply ignore it, he moves on to his next child.
You mean like Zohran ignores you when you're just trying to attack him and start fights with him? You mean exactly like that? Dude, how can you say you're the guy who's not going to get into pointless arguments when that's all you've been like all he's been doing in every debate is try, and I assume the rest of his campaign is trying to start spats and trying to attack Zohran, and then he's like, yeah, but with Trump I would like be careful. Like, this dude is openly attacking the only progressive leftist candidate here, and then he's saying, but I would hold off on Trump. I wouldn't like start things with him. Like, what the fuck?
Foolishness. So, to your question,
what the fuck?
I will fight Donald Trump as mayor, stand up to him, sue him if necessary. But my job is to serve the people of New York, and that sometimes involves not provoking a childish person, but one who unfortunately holds a lot of power. And
yes, this guy here, he's only interested in the effective actions of provoking a non-childish person like Mamdani. He won't go after people like Trump, but he will go after the left. He will.
Of our city budget.
That's all he's there
funding.
for.
Candidates, thank you for this first round.
Okay, candidate. Some of you have many years of government experience, while others have spent less than a decade in office. One of you has never been elected to any office. So, and then if we consider age, one of you would be, if elected, the oldest person ever to be sworn in as mayor, while another would be the youngest mayor to take office in more than 100 years. So let me start with you, Mr. Mamdani. What do you say to critics who think that a 33-year-old assemblyman who's only been in office 4 years needs more experience before becoming mayor of the largest city in the country?
He has more experience than Tilson.
I would ask is for them to judge me by the campaign that I am running. A campaign we began with about 2 full-time employees polling at 1% that has now grown to be one where we manage over 36,000 volunteers that have knocked on nearly 1 million doors. And ultimately, what I will deliver to New York City is what I've been delivering in this race: innovation and competence. And I will do so by hiring the best and the brightest. Because for too long, we've had an understanding of leadership where you simply want to replicate each one of your ideas and hire the people who will be quickest to say yes to whatever you say to them. I will instead hire the people who have the track records, the excellence, the fluency. And it has been a pleasure to meet with incredible officials like Maria Torres Springer, like Patrick Gaspard, like Steve Banks, like Amit Baga, so many who have delivered that public service and that public excellence in this city. And that is what I would be doing as the next mayor of this city of New York.
Mr. Myrie, similar question. What would you say to New Yorkers concerned that your legislative record, however lengthy, is not the same as running an organization of 300,000 employees?
Listen, I think New Yorkers want a mayor that is going to deliver results for them and to do it when it is difficult to achieve. I've passed over 60 bills that have become the law. But when I ran for state senate back in 2018, Albany was dysfunctional. Some rogue Democrats, propped up by Andrew Cuomo, prevented so many legislation that would help everyday New Yorkers, whether it was protection for tenants, whether it was reproductive health, whether it was climate legislation, whether it was your right to be safe in your neighborhood. And on day one in the state senate, I passed something called early voting, which all of us are going to participate in on this Saturday. So I am
we do need younger people, but it's just funny to me that Mamdani has more experience than Tilson, that old conservative guy. Like, not only is he so old and so conservative, but he has no experience. Why is he here? Like, he's just there because Wall Street wanted an attack dog, because without Tilson, Cuomo, like, there wouldn't be anyone who could attack Zohran except Cuomo. And if Cuomo's like desperately attacking Zohran for the entire debate, like, Cuomo can't even defend himself, never mind try to attack someone else. It just make him look like crap. Like, Tilson is only there. It's amazing to me, like, how fucked this democracy is, because he's like, Tilson's only there to represent hedge funds that back him or whatever, and want somebody there to, you know, draw attention and support away from the leftists. That's the only reason he's there. And the fact that, like, we let him be there as a serious candidate when everyone knows he's just there as a corporate plant, it's crazy to me. It's how corrupt the Democrats are to not let that Blake guy who served under Obama and Biden on the stage, but then to let Tilson, who's a former hedge fund manager with no political experience, on the stage. Actually insane.
About the results and about the work. I have built coalition. I have listened to stakeholders. I've done really difficult things. That is the job of the mayor, to get everyone at the table and to achieve something that people said was impossible. I've been in the business of delivering for the people of my district. I look forward to doing the same thing for the people of New York City.
Okay. Mr. Cuomo, if elected, you would be the oldest person ever sworn in as mayor. If you serve 2 full terms, you'd be 76 years old upon leaving office. Is somebody in their 70s the ideal age for holding the second hardest job in America?
Let's do one term at a time if we can. I think you raise a very important point.
His jokes don't hit. You suck.
And I think inexperience is dangerous in this case.
Your wrinkly
Mr. Mamdani
sausage.
has a staff of 5 people. You're not going to run a staff of 3.
Oh, shut up, man. Shut up. Your experience has been taking money from billionaires. Shut up.
100,000 employees. He's never dealt with the city council. He's never dealt with the Congress. He's never dealt with the state legislature. He's never negotiated with.
Cuomo's sounding pretty desperate right now. He can't attack without, he can't answer a question without attacking Zohran.
With the union. He's never built anything. He's never dealt with a natural emergency. He's never dealt with a hurricane, with a flood, etc. He's never done any of the essentials. And now you have Donald Trump on top of all of that. And he's never dealt with what I think is the greatest national threat that we face in this president. To put a person in this seat at this time with no experience is reckless and dangerous. To Mr. Lander and his experience, remember, this was the fiscal watchdog under the Eric Adams administration, which was like the bookkeeper at Tammany Hall.
I love how much Cuomo hates this guy too. This guy's not even a competitor, but before Cuomo finishes an answer, he has to take a little dig at this Lander guy. That's really funny. Yes, Zohran has fantastic eyebrows.
To Mr. Cuomo, I have never had to resign in disgrace.
I like his
never
hair. I just like his vibe.
I have never stolen hundreds of millions of dollars from the MTA. I have never
hounded
the
13
women
him.
who credibly accused me of sexual harassment. I have never sued for their gynecological records, and I have never done those things because I am not you, Mr. Cuomo. And furthermore, the name is Mamdani. M-A-M-D-A-N-I. You should learn how to say it because we got to get it right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty racist trope. I mean, you'll see Republicans do. They did it with Kamala and stuff. You know what I mean? They always they pronounce AOC's name wrong all the time. They purposely mispronounce the names of brown people a lot. It's just something they do. If you're not white, they're not going to say your name right. Cuomo at this late date is still calling him Mamdani. He's not getting the guy's last name right. At this point, it really does start to sound like Cuomo's intentionally doing it to be a racist fuck. Like, that's my impression.
May I respond?
Is this my response, or is this my 60 seconds on the question?
Let Mr. Landers speak, and then you can respond to both.
Okay. Just to be clear, is this my response to Andrew, or is this my 60 seconds?
No. This is your response if you choose.
Thank you. So I've gotten so many Eric Adams contracts canceled, we can't keep track. He tried to put a $432 million no-bid crony contract, and we audited it, and we got it canceled. We have done it time and time again. Andrew knows a lot about corruption. That's part of the experience he had. He created a corruption commission and then killed it as soon as it got too close to him. But his senior aides had to resign in corruption.
That's true. So this was when, Cuomo's been the governor. And like I said last time, Cuomo as the governor of New York was famous for the way he legislated, which was the Democrats obviously had the majority in New York's House and their Senate. But what Cuomo would do was he caucused with like a small group of conservative New York senators, and they would basically pass bills with the Republicans instead of the Democrats. And Cuomo was like the leader of that little group. So he was infamous for being governor of New York, and for years at a time, the legislature was effectively controlled by the Republicans because Cuomo got like a group of Democrats to like pass legislation with them. And at one point he did introduce like an anti-corruption panel, and then as soon as it started investigating him and his staffers, he like canceled the panel. It was like a big public scandal a couple years ago. I had forgot about it though, but it's so fun. Cuomo's so shit.
Grace, and let's be clear, he has experience, but leadership is not inviting 25-year-old young women into your office, as he admitted he did, and then asking them about their intimate life and whether they would date older men. I lead by building the best teams, not through sexual harassment, corruption, and disgrace.
Mr. Cuomo.
Mr. Mamdani's right. He's never done anything, period.
Mr. Mamdani.
This is a man who
Mamdani.
Just
say the name right, Mamdani.
This is a man.
Like, that's actually so... He still won't say it right. Like, that's just openly being racist at this point.
Who has done nothing. He's accomplished nothing. 3 bills are all he passed. He is the worst attendance record in the New York State Assembly. He has never held a real job. He has 0 accomplishments.
I want to be very
And now
clear.
he thinks he's going to be ready to be mayor of the city of New York. It is laughable. It is laughable, and it is dangerous.
I want
Really
Mr.
quick, and then
Cuomo
we're
to
gonna
look
move
out
on.
into the crowd and look at Richard Chow, who lost his brother to suicide because of the taxi driver debt crisis. I went with Mr. Chow over many, many months organizing to push this very city to finally reckon with its complicity in that, and we won $450 million in debt relief. And I want you to look at him and tell him that that's nothing.
Okay, let's
You passed
let's move to
3 bills. Let's move to Mr. Stringer.
Yeah.
Louder applause
Just
for
right to Chase
Mamdani.
and tell what's really going on here. So, truth be told, experience matters. And Andrew Cuomo has experience. I know that. He does. But vision matters. And Mamdani, said it right?
Mamdani, almost there.
Okay, I'm getting there.
Almost there.
But you have the vision, and you have articulated it during the campaign.
It's not that hard to get right.
Is
It's only these old white dudes who have a problem saying it's Mamdani. It's not a hard name to say. Holy shit.
somebody...
This should be disqualifying. You can't be mayor of New York if you can't like, pronounce a brown last name. Like, why are you trying?
who can do both. And my experience and my vision, when you combine it, is the 3rd lane to win this race. And that's what we have to do.
Very good, very
They're
good.
laughing at him.
We cannot have a mayoralty on training wheels, but we also have to have a mayor who's willing to go to town hall meetings, to meet with the voters where they are. And that hasn't happened with the experienced candidate. Now, one last thing. Every job I've had, state legislator, I introduced rules of reform in the assembly and got it passed. As Manhattan Borough president, I actually built affordable housing. I didn't do 1 or 2 rezonings. I did that as my life's work and made a difference. As controller, I built the best controller's office that Brad Lander takes credit for, and I'm proud of that.
Okay, fair enough. I want to bring Ms. Adams into the conversation. Ms. Adams, your private sector experience involved finding and training corporate leaders. Government, however, involves working with people who are independently elected, maybe politically connected, who cannot be bypassed, cannot be fired. How do you avoid falling into the trap of catering to vested interests at the expense, possibly, of the public interest?
Well, in the words of Scott Stringer, let's just cut to the chase. As the only candidate currently doing this work that everyone is aspiring to do as co-leader in city government and city hall already, as one that has walked up those steps of city hall for almost 10 years, as the one that is leading one of the largest legislative bodies in the entire country, as one that has seen 120,000 units of affordable housing coming up in the city, as one who has championed the largest victory for affordable housing in a generation, as one that is already doing this work, as one that has taken private skills from the private sector in management. I have trained people that will make more money than I will ever make in a lifetime, and bringing those skills with me into the public sector, into the New York City Council, now leading a body of 50 council members, as the one with the experience ready to go to work tomorrow, because where I work is where everyone else on this stage aspires to work, in City Hall in Adrian Adams, New York.
Okay. I have a question for you, Mr. Tilson, related to this discussion. You have frequently said on the campaign trail that, quote, career politicians have caused many of the city's problems or made them worse. You said tonight, in fact, that this is no time for amateur hour. Explain why a lack of experience running a city agency would make you a better manager than some of your rivals here.
I actually view not being a politician as a feature, not a bug. It is possible to hire people in the administration,
speak.
Of course,
that's
who have,
very relatable
the
to average
of running
workers.
A big bureaucracy. I would point to Mike Bloomberg as my inspiration when I decided to run.
The poorest people he's ever talked to are like the data analysts at his hedge fund's office. So he says, he's like, how do I relate to normal people? Bugs and features. It's like, nobody talks like that, you fucking tool.
Mayor, he had never held elected office
This
before,
isn't like a
and he was one of our greatest mayors.
2015
he steered us through the global financial
software
crisis.
class.
And
You
I
don't
believe
talk
that
like
having
that.
someone like him, who I saw was independent of all the special interests, who in a low turnout off-season primary like what we're having right now, only 5% of New Yorkers of our total population is probably going to be enough to win the primary, and effectively, and certainly last time was enough to win the mayoralty. So I think we need a mayor who is independent of that inherently corrupting system, who doesn't need the job, who isn't angling for higher office, and who brings a business background, which I think is more relevant to managing one of the world's largest bureaucracies.
Okay. Thank you, candidates.
When New Yorkers are asked their top concerns, one of the biggest issues is always affordability, particularly the high cost of housing. Millions of New Yorkers in rent-stabilized apartments are currently awaiting a final ruling from the Rent Guidelines Board about how much they could pay more each month in rent. But first, we'll get to a crucial question about the production of housing. We want you, the candidates, to address New Yorkers with your top proposal to ease the housing crunch. And I'll start with you, Mr. Myrie. We know you've been vocal about a plan to build and preserve 1 million units of housing. You mentioned it earlier. Is that a realistic possibility given the current dynamics in the city?
I kind of want to hear
Let me tell you
answer.
what's real, Katie.
I'm going to
People are
start
leaving the city
skipping
because they can't afford to stay
answers
here.
I don't care about.
They can't afford the rent. Can't afford to own a home.
$1 million is
like
a
me
lot.
and my wife, who were looking to put down roots in the same neighborhood we grew up in.
Hey, but how do you
People
build the
are
houses?
struggling.
We
and
get
we've
it.
had leaders of the past that have put their solutions forward, and things have only gotten worse.
Okay.
So yes, 1 million homes over the next 10 years,
Tell
because
me-
we can't
tell
keep
me.
nibbling around the
No,
edges.
I know
That is the
why.
only way
Tell
we're
me
actually going to
how.
bring down the cost of housing. And listen, is it going to be challenging?
How?
Of course it's going to be challenging.
Yeah, how?
But anything worth anything
No,
is going to be
how?
hard to do.
Okay.
We built the Empire State Building in 13 months.
what's your
and we did it
plan?
100 years ago.
What are you gonna
Come
do?
on already. Of course we can do a
Come
million
on,
homes.
he
I want
says.
to change our public land to be affordable housing.
Okay,
I want
that's
to convert our
something.
industrial areas to residential. We have commercial real estate space that is laying vacant that can be converted as well. We have opportunities to
okay.
revitalize NYCHA. We got to be
That's like a
bold in
few
this moment,
things.
but we need the leadership and the courage to get it done, and that's what I'm going to do.
Thank you. Mr.
You
Stringer,
mentioned a few things.
your housing model, your housing plan is to model a highly successful plan from the 1950s. You call it Mitchell-Lama 2.0. It sounds ideal, but how would you pay for this expansive plan?
Okay, this is where we just got to have an honest conversation. I get $1 million. I could easily stay. We could do 2.5 million, given my experience. It's all. Put that aside for a second. People need affordable housing now. They need low-income housing now. The way we do it is we take the 1,000 vacant lots I audited as controller, and we give that land back to the people, to not-for-profits, to limited profit developers. We don't ask the luxury developers to
That's
build
a
the low
good-
and affordable
that's a
housing
good-
we need. We
that's
get
the
a
answer.
generation of people to come in and build the tens of thousands of units of housing. See, it's not just about building housing. The second question, or the question that I care passionately about, is who are we building housing for? We got to build more housing, 2-, 3-bedroom apartments for families, so that after the second kid, they don't leave, they stay here. We need to do what we did with Mitchell-Lama housing, a housing stock that is the best practice in the world. We got to build more of that housing, integrated housing, because the people who moved into those buildings, you know what they did? They didn't just exist in those apartments.
It's true. Think about it this way. Like, if you're laying out an apartment building, you're incentivized to do 1 or 2 bedroom units, because the more 1 or 2 bedroom units you can fit in, the more money you're going to make, given, you know, the square footage of your building, right? If you have an apartment building where the apartments have 3 or 4 bedrooms, like something that's actually designed for a family, that's going to take up like twice the room, right? And it's not necessarily going to be for twice the rent. So there is definitely like a natural tendency of big real estate developers to only develop like 1 or 2 bedroom places, and just making that completely unaffordable for families. So I just wanted to point out, like, you kind of need somebody to step in and do something. And I don't know, you know, this guy seems like an FDR, like a you know, just like a liberal. It's fine.
Build communities, schools,
it's not
and
enough,
daycare centers.
but
And
it'll
this is a
help.
promise I can keep while I'm alive, while I'm mayor, and we'll see what happens going forward. But let's do that immediately on day one when I'm mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Lander, as mayor, you declared
like
a
he
housing
expects to
emergency
die
which could help you
soon.
build 500,000 homes, including on city-owned golf courses. How do you get the citywide support for this plan?
So the New York Times opinion up there.
All right, hold on. Let's see what.
That's around the Interborough Express, where we've got new opportunities for transit-oriented development, and we can build great new neighborhoods on 4 of the city's 12 golf courses because.
I feel like you didn't
Voters who wonder if all that experience might end up being, in the end, the wrong experience, since after decades of work, we've ended up in a housing emergency here in the city.
Yeah, I would say, Errol, I would say look at the results, right? Everyone has a plan.
The
I have a
results
plan,
are
I have a plan.
bad.
Everyone has a plan. They had a plan to build LaGuardia Airport. Nobody did it until I did it. They had a plan to build a new Moynihan train station, but nobody could do it until I did it. They had a plan to finish the 2nd Avenue subway, but nobody could do it until I could do it. Now we have plans to build affordable housing, and we do need hundreds of thousands of units of affordable housing, there's no doubt, but we're going to need a different model. The city HPD does not work to create this volume. The state housing program does not work to create this volume. We're going to have to accelerate the ULERP program, and then we're going to have to open every option available. NYCHA units, office to residential conversion. Every city-owned piece of property we have to look at, air rights, how do we maximize it? We are going to have a full-on assault to build affordable housing. And yes, it's one thing to have a plan. It's another thing to have the ability to do it. And that's where New York City has fallen down time and time again, not the managerial ability to complete a plan.
Ms. Adams, you mentioned the recent City of Yes rezoning that you were instrumental in helping to pass. It's supposed to create tens of thousands of units of housing, but the experience of past rezonings, like the one in downtown Brooklyn, suggests that it can take as long as 10 years or longer for rezonings to result in actual construction. If you're elected mayor, what would be your plan to get units built more quickly than that?
We're going to build it faster, and just to let Mr. Cuomo know, I've got a plan. It's already in the works. It is called the City of Yes, the City for All, something that I have already ushered in. So the work is already being done. We're hearing a lot of plans and policies.
Did
but
she
this
say a
is something
sentence
already.
there?
I'm already doing this work.
Okay,
we
whatever.
have already begun.
Blah, 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 blah. I'm skipping her answer. Sorry. Let's listen to... Oh, God, yeah. Let's listen to Tilson. Let's listen to Tilson.
Argue for his approach.
Sure. If I were...
And still on housing, and to bring the last two of you into it, Mr. Tilson, you said in the last debate that your housing construction plan is the opposite of Mr. Mamdani's. More private sector, less public. Can you elaborate on that in your 60 seconds, and then we'll hear Mr. Mamdani argue for his approach?
Sure. If I were to summarize my plan in 4 words, it'd be unleash the private sector. That is the only way to rapidly build anything like the scale that we're talking about. I said it's the opposite of his plan because his plan is to spend $100 billion city dollars to build affordable housing. So my plan, I don't think this should take 10 years if you truly do it. And it's not just zoning regs. It's all the whole bureaucracy going through the city government agencies. It's going through the whole ULERP process. This can be done. Austin, Texas is a good example. Their rents went up 25% in
He's
the
a
year
Republican.
2021.
Do you see what I mean? He's just a Republican. Like, he's like, well, let's do what Texas does.
The city leaped into action, quickly changed its zoning rules. They increased supply by 15% in 3 years, and rents dropped by 20%. I don't just want to stabilize rent. I think we can drop rents in this city. That's the objective. But right now, it's outrageous that businesses and real estate developers have to hire expediters to deal with the city bureaucracy. So it's a much bigger problem, and the mayor controls most or all of this.
Thank you, Mr. Mamdani.
I met a grandmother in a senior center in Brownsville, and she came up to me and told me that she'd been on a waiting list for 7 years for senior housing, and that she wasn't sure if she was going to be able to stay in the city any longer. The reason that my
his only like Vivi, he's not explicitly against affordable rent, but even though that's what it makes it sound like when he's like, I want to do the opposite of Mamdani. But like, he's implicitly against affordable rent because his only solution to any of this is let's make it easier for real estate companies to build whatever they want, basically. Like, his only solution to the housing crisis is let's just like let real estate developers build more freely. But you're not actually like addressing like, you know, the people's ability to afford that real estate. obviously. You're not addressing like the costs those people might face. You're not addressing like any kind of assistance that the government could provide, right? So yeah, no, I think he is, because he would probably cut a lot of the programs like rent control and stuff like that. Like the idea that this this zone of housing has to be affordable housing, has to be like low cost housing. That Tilson guy would get rid of all of those rules so that instead of building like housing for low income people, real estate companies would just be able to build whatever they want. That's basically what he's saying. And he thinks that that will increase investment so much that a bunch of housing will just pop up, and just by virtue of having all that housing, the rent will come down. But the truth is, those companies are only building those houses there if they think they can make a lot of money off of it. So like, it's not a way to really make things affordable. It's almost like implicitly saying, no, we're gonna make it even easier. We're gonna like encourage corporations' ability to like take way too much money for your rent, basically. Yeah, no, he just, it is awful. She should make it sound awful, because it is awful. It's not a adequate solution. It'd be the equivalent. Imagine if somebody, it's not the exact same thing, but imagine if somebody's solution to healthcare costs was we're gonna deregulate healthcare so that private companies can open up more hospitals and doctors' offices. Like that's what Tilson's like strategy is. We're going to make healthcare more affordable by deregulating it so that it's more profitable for a bunch of companies to open up whatever kind of hospital or clinic that they want to, as if that's a plan for affordable healthcare. So yeah, no, it's not a plan. It's a very stupid, very bad, very dumb plan.
I met a grandmother in a senior center in Brownsville, and she came up to me and told me that she'd been on a waiting list for 7 years for senior housing.
Yeah, and like he has a stated intention for a solution, but he's not really trying to solve it. Like, he doesn't really think that'll help. He's just like, he's saying what he knows sounds kind of like a solution that also doesn't upset his rich donors, his trust fund or hedge fund donors and stuff.
And that she wasn't sure if she was going to be able to stay in the city any longer. The reason that my campaign is committing to building 200,000 truly affordable homes is because if we don't, we will lose the very New Yorkers who built this city. And we will lose them unless we rapidly scale up the programs we already have. Programs in HPD like SARA, Senior Affordable Rental Apartments, ELA, extremely low-level affordability, the very kind of programs that are built for the New Yorkers who are being priced out of the market. And we do this while also ensuring that it is easier to build even for the private sector. We end the requirement to build parking. We end this piecemeal approach that we've taken, instead having a city-wide comprehensive planning approach. These are the kinds of ways in which we can actually ensure that we start to build more than 4 houses per 1,000 people, that we actually start to get up to Jersey City and Tokyo and build the housing that's necessary in the city.
To finish this round, by a show of hands, I will translate for the radio audience, how many of you would support a rent-stabilized rent freeze this year? Hands up if you do.
So everyone does except for Tilson. I just want to point everyone. So this is like literally the question of affordable housing. Do you support rent freezes? Do you support rent control? Something like that to literally directly make housing cost less. You'll notice, you know, 5 hands up very fast. Cuomo has a little finger. Cuomo's not so sure, right? Cuomo's like, well, I don't know. And Tilson's just like, no. So I just want to note that. I just want us to note that when it comes down to it, these ones are very confident in, yeah, obviously I'm going to make housing more affordable. Tilson totally against it. Cuomo kind of trying to play both sides.
Okay, the ones whose hands are up are Stringer, Myrie, Mamdani, and Lander. Not up.
Can you restate the question, please?
Would you support your donors who gave you $2.5 million to freeze the rent?
In the rent stabilization system this year, rent freeze this year? Yes or no, Mr. Cuomo?
Would I vote for a rent freeze this year?
Yes.
I'd leave it to the Rent Guidelines Board.
Now, who controls them? The mayor.
We appoint them. The law controls them. You should read it once in a while.
The law didn't control you, did it?
You should read it.
Ms. Adams, your hand was not up, was it? Why not? Oh, it was
there has
raised.
to be a balance there,
So
though,
only
between the
Mr.
homeowners as well,
Tilson's
though.
hand was not up. Okay, that was a yes or no. And finally, also
There
on a
has
show
to
of
be a
hands,
balance
on
between
rent freeze or
homeowners
no.
and
A listener to my show
developers.
asks, would you be open to tying rent increases to landlord rates of return, their profits, rather than simply on 1 year's costs? Yes or no if you're open to tying the increases to profits rather than 1 year's cost increase. Who would say yes to that change or that proposal? I don't see any hands.
Nobody likes
Right, it
that.
is part of the formula already.
Yeah, it is. Like, that's like a very standard like to the conservative guys, that's like too conservative. Like, they think, oh, Tilson thinks, oh, businesses should be able to profit as much as they can. Like, we shouldn't like limit rent according to how profitable the business is. Whereas all the progressives are just like that's not enough. Or in other words, like if you had a situation where it wasn't profitable for companies to rent out to people, but rent was still too high for people, you basically don't want companies not doing well to limit how much you can reduce rent, how much you can make rent affordable. Like, the question they just asked was, well, what about if we only took the companies that were making a lot of money and we limited the rent that they could charge? But that's not really like again, you don't want your ability to limit rent to depend on, is the company that owns the building making like 20-30% profits off it? You know what I mean? You don't want your hands to be tied to address rental costs, except in the cases where the company's making a ton of money, right? So nobody is really on. A couple of them don't want to rein in companies at all, and most of them are like, that's not a good approach. Basically,
it's part of the formula.
It is part of the formula. Now you look at a variety of factors, including net operating income relative to cost, as it should be.
Mr. Lander's right.
This is so sad. Like, the candidates have to like inform the moderators why their questions are stupid, basically.
Law. You look at the costs that the landlord is incurring, and that's how you set the rent increase if you do.
But also the profits.
Yes,
profit margins.
Yeah, they do an economic analysis.
Yeah.
That's what the Rent Guidelines Board does.
Katie.
Thank you. And this question is from Mr. Cuomo because it did come up earlier. Many voters are grappling with how to disqualify you or not after the sexual harassment findings that led to your resignation as governor.
Yeah.
How do you argue people should consider that factor? And we'll let the other candidates give their take.
Yeah, I would ask them to look at the facts and not the political rhetoric that you hear on this stage. I said when the report was issued, it was all political. That's what I said. And I said,
why did you resign?
Was going to come of it.
Why did you resign?
4 years later, we've had 5 district attorneys, Democrat, Republicans, upstate, downstate. They've all looked at them. Nothing has come of them.
Why did you resign?
There has been one civil case that's been
resolved. Why did you resign?
I was dropped from the case.
If it's nothing, then why did you resign?
Absolutely nothing has come except political fodder for my opponents.
Why did you resign?
Fodder at the time.
Do any other candidates want to chime in?
Why did you resign?
Andrew, you admitted at the time that you called a 25-year-old staffer into your office and asked her questions about whether she had older
Why did he resign if nothing
whether she was
happened?
available, and intimated that you were looking for a partner. Everybody here knows that you sexually harassed women, that you created a toxic
Can't
work
somebody
environment.
just ask, why did you resign then?
These CUNY students, many of them young women. I went to the city college commencement. The valedictorian is going to come work at the Department of Homeless Services. I don't want to have to tell her, don't go work at City Hall because the mayor is a sexual harasser.
Those are just bold-faced lies,
you admitted
and you know
it at the time.
And it's frightening that you can look at a camera and lie.
Right now,
why did you resign from governor?
At the time.
I never said that. I never said that. And by the way, that has been totally disproven by every court.
Why did you
resign?
resign? Can somebody please ask, why did you resign then?
Yes, they do, sir. A report was issued. The DAs looked at it. They all disagree with you. I was dropped from the case. So those are the facts.
The Biden Justice Department and the Attorney General of the state of New York, and again, it was reported that you admitted at the time that it was a mistake to call that 25-year-old into your office. Folks can check the record.
And the Attorney
folks
General
know if he worked for you, you would fire him.
Hang on. Attorney General's just
Damn, Zoran's got this. Zoran's got. Yo, It was 51-49. Cuomo was up by 2% before the previous debate. After these two debates, like, I know why they're taking these off YouTube, because these debates are gonna guarantee a Zohran victory. Like, Cuomo looks like shit, and if he's even winning, he's barely winning.
By a court to be hearsay and not a finding at all. I understand Mr. Lander is just appalled.
The women accused you of sexual harassment. That's what you're calling hearsay.
Can somebody ask him why he resigned, please?
All those complaints, and not a single case.
We're going in circles. Let's move on.
Better than the facts.
Obvious that this is disqualifying.
Candidates?
The man resigned. Should be obvious. The problem is we do not get to address the issues that New Yorkers care about.
Yeah, that's just what we're going to do. That's just what we're going to do. Just hang on.
Ooh, I'm clapping at that.
Let's talk about quality of life, concerns about disorder and public safety. The number of complaints about disorderly conduct in New York City have nearly tripled compared to the pre-pandemic year of 2018. Arrests for disorderly conduct have
people
risen
out there getting wild.
But New Yorkers still say they are less satisfied about their quality of life than in the past. So we're going to start with you, Mr. Lander. Do you want the NYPD to address quality of life violations, or is there some other way to do it? And how would you address concerns about quality of life without violating constitutional rights or opening the door to accusations of illegal profiling?
As mayor, my #1 priority will be to end street homelessness for people with serious mental illness.
Quality of life.
What's influencing
How about
their quality of life?
affordable
What would they like
apartments?
changed? They would like to be able to get on the subway and feel safer. Last week I talked about a friend whose middle school student was pushed to the ground by a mentally ill homeless person. But we don't have to be a city where a couple thousand of our mentally ill neighbors sleep on subway platforms and the sidewalks and stoops of our buildings. And yes, of course, NYPD have a role to play in keeping neighborhoods safe, getting guns off the street, but no amount of policing is going to connect a homeless mentally ill person to the housing and services that they actually need. The plan that will is called Housing First. It's working in Houston and Denver and Salt Lake City. We used it here to end street homelessness for veterans, and I will use it to end street homelessness for people with serious mental illness, and that'll be a city with a dramatically better quality of life for everyone.
Okay. Mr. Stringer.
That was an answer.
Let me try to answer your direct question, which is the issue of quality of life. And to me, as someone who has spent his entire life here, who's raising kids here, people do not want to live with trash. They don't want to live with broken sidewalks. They don't want a 311 system that can't resolve the basic day-to-day issues that New Yorkers face. We've gotten away from that kind of work. You know, swagger to me is different than swagger at City Hall today. Swagger means I feel satisfied when we help somebody get the services we need. How I'm going to do it specifically? We got to have a deputy mayor for quality of life and institute what I call quality stat, meaning there's a lot of and I will resolve the complaint in 24 hours. That's the kind of mayor that we need in the city to keep people here and to make sure that we become the beacon of the greatest city in the world.
Okay. What the hell is he talking about?
You know, when I speak to New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs, what I hear time and time again are these very kinds of complaints. Complaints around the cleanliness of our streets, complaints around whether the parks that they love can actually be maintained. And so many of them come back to a mayoral administration that has underfunded city agencies time and time again, literally requesting to take garbage cans off of sidewalks. That's what we have had for the last 4 years. I'm proud to have been endorsed by DC 37, the single largest labor union representing municipal workers in this city. The people who run this city trust me to lead this city. And what I will do is fully fund each one of those agencies to ensure that we are not just providing public service, we're providing public excellence so that each and every New Yorker is finally receiving the quality of life that they deserve living in the city.
Okay. And so, Mr. Myrie, really in a lot of ways what I'm getting at is that
they love
the city government and a lot of voters, frankly, will reflexively reach for the NYPD as the best tool to handle what they perceive as disorder, which some people say is kind of a stepping stone towards crime or in some ways a precursor to it. What's your take on that and how would you handle it?
Yeah, let me first say, Scott, you got a little bit of swagger. You got some sneakers on today.
How would you send the NYDP against the precursors of crime? The precursors of crime. That question is crazy. Well, we'll look for whoever's brown, and then we'll keep an eye on them. Like, what are you talking about?
Okay, so I don't want you to discount yourself.
I got it from you.
Yeah, all right, very good.
Oh, sneaker bros. Sneaker bros. They're sneaker bros now.
So let me say this. Look, I walk the streets. I take the subways just like you do.
Oh, okay, they're 2 and 3. They're my 2 and 3 now. No, I don't know. I like the newly brown man as well.
with politics is because you walk the streets, you take the subways, and then you listen to folks on this stage, and it's completely divorced from your reality. Here's what I want to do. I think we need police and clinician teams in our subways and our streets 24/7 to get people on the path to real recovery. New Yorkers are compassionate people, but we want to ensure that people are actually getting that help. So I want stabilization centers in every borough so that we can deliver that help. Public safety requires us to do two things. We understand that police officers are necessary, but we also have to invest in the things we know prevent crime and disorder in the first place. That's why I want 50,000 more summer youth jobs so that it is universal. We have no young person on a waiting list. Stop telling our kids what not to do without giving them something to do. I want universal after school as well so that we can have a safe place to be and have our families have a place where their children can stay.
Show off your 6 sneaks, bro.
Yes, to answer your question directly about enforcing more quality of life issues. For example, I ride my bike almost every day in the city. The e-bikes are fast and dangerous, and we're riding up on the sidewalks, blowing through red lights.
I'm an old white man. I'm scared of e-bikes.
I can tell you, being out there every day, they're now obeying the law. That is the kind of thing that contributes to the feeling of lack of safety. I will say that what I would not do is demonize the police by calling them wicked and corrupt, by threatening to defund and dismantle them, as Zohran has done. And we are at a 34-year low in the number of police officers. There's only one candidate on this stage, him, who has not said that he would try and build that number back up. So I think his Department of Community Safety, which he talks about, is just backdoor code word for continue to defund the police. They are demoralized, they're understaffed, and we have created a revolving door where an officer at the Midtown North Precinct, very close to here, actually told me she is still filling out the paperwork for most of her arrests, and the criminal is back out onto the street before she's finished.
Did you want to respond?
I want to say it very clearly, because both Mr. Tilson and Andrew Cuomo's Republican billionaire donors have been lying about me on our television screens and right now. I will not defund the police. I will work with the police because I believe the police have a critical role to play in creating public service, public safety. And fundamentally, when I put together our proposal for the Department of Community Safety, it was built upon the many conversations I had with rank and file officers who had told me that they signed up to join the department to take on serious crimes. And yet what they were being asked to do is play the roles of mental health professionals and social workers. And that is
like, not to jump in here in the defense of the cops, but the cops do want, like what Zohran has taught, the cops do want more mental health professionals around to like take care of mental health situations so the police don't have to. They do want that. And for Tilson to say like that's just code word for defund the police, like he's weaponizing something that the police want, you know, to say it's like anti-police. It's very weird, but like if I was a police person, I would not be happy with Tilson at the moment.
Part of the reason why 65% of crimes in the first quarter of this year are still not solved. We need to ensure police can focus on those crimes, and we have mental health professionals and social workers to address and tackle and resolve the mental health crisis and homelessness.
Okay,
I just want to clarify, Whitney, did you not talk about my police retention plan, or you didn't?
Come on, Scott. Ms. Adams, I want to bring you in the conversation because you were at City Hall when the funding question came up that has been interpreted by some as defund the police. What was happening then in that particular session with that particular proposal? And if you're elected, what would you do about this question of where and when and if the police get involved in quality of life policing?
Thank you for asking the clarifying question, Errol, very much. The FY 2021 budget season was a very, very tough season for the New York City Council and quite frankly for the mayoral administration as well. We were still masked up in the pandemic, and New York's Trump.
She's like the most mealy mouth. I'll probably just skip all her answers because she's like the most
if we wonder why the people
do nothing, say nothing
are frustrated, is because of the disconnect of what they're hearing. They are afraid on the streets. They feel unsafe. You can quote statistics all day long. They get afraid walking into the subway. They get afraid walking down the street when they see a mentally ill homeless person. We did defund the police. We did. We cut $1 billion from the police. People on this stage said defund the police. That was the change.
Including you.
$1 billion was taken from the police department. Mr. Mamdani says he would dismantle the police.
Mamdani. He can't do it. He won't do it right.
That's his expression. Mr. Lander said, I'll admit, progressives like me were slow to recognize the problems of crime and quality of life and mopeds.
See, it's not so difficult to take responsibility, is it?
That's what he said, that they were slow to realize the crime that people were living with. We have to get back to safety. I would add 5,000 police officers, Yes, we need mental health professionals who also help work with the mentally ill, and they're two totally separate things. But this city has to be safe. Opportunity for youth is part of it. But if people don't feel safe, Errol, they're not going to stay. End of story.
Okay, real quick.
Yeah, I mean, I think New Yorkers want accountability. They want
It's like the same 10 people clapping and cheering every time Cuomo speaks. It's really sad.
accountability when people commit crimes. They want accountability when...
I'm starting to recognize the voice of the female staffer who's going, woo, every time Cuomo talks, because it's just the same. It's very sad.
Officers use excessive force. They want accountability when top brass violate their office, and they want accountability from elected officials. So yes, I said we were slow to reckon with rising disorder. Here's how I'm going to actually deliver it. You've never taken responsibility for one single thing you've done wrong in your entire life. Not one single thing. You should try it sometime.
Okay, Ms. Adams, real quick.
Yeah, I just want to clear up the whole defund mystery here that keeps on being used as far as the New York City Council and the FY 2021 budget is concerned. Let's just be clear. The budget is negotiated with the mayoral administration. The NYPD is a part of the mayoral administration, and the reallocation of funds was done with the knowledge of the NYPD, not in any far-off land, far away. I don't know how long you've been out of it, Mr. Cuomo, but it's been a while. So I just want to make sure that we are clear
even
here tonight. All
like,
slogans and scare tactics
Cuomo.
aren't going to make anybody in New York City safer.
Okay, candidates, thank you.
Damn.
Candidates,
Okay, she actually stood up.
That's where
I appreciate
each candidate
that.
will answer our questions with a brief response, usually yes or no.
They're all the candidates seem like they genuinely hate Cuomo, except for Tilson, but like all the real candidates seem like they genuinely hate Cuomo. It's really funny.
With a show of hands one, despite changes in technology, do you still have a Metro card in your wallet? Show of hands. Mr. Myrie, Mr. Cuomo, Ms. Adams still have the Metro card. God bless you.
Cuomo's probably lying. Cuomo's definitely lying.
Name one department that you would make cuts to. We'll go right down the line. Mr. Tilson. Lightning.
There's so many to choose from.
Just one.
I think there's a lot of fat to cut in the DOE budget, but there are other areas I would invest more in.
DOE means
Department of Education. Holy shit.
Department of Education, not the Board of Elections. Mr. Stringer.
As controller, I identified efficiencies in every city agency to make them more run better and efficient. So it's not about cutting or targeting one agency. It's really about doing due diligence in all the agencies.
Mr. Myrie.
Yeah, I think New Yorkers experience city services every day. It's not about who has what. It's about how we're delivering. So I think it's important that we are efficient in that. I think we can shift some funding from
Department of
Economic Development Corporation
Education.
to our city's general
Okay,
fund.
Mr. Mamdani.
I think we have to end our city's addiction to consulting and contracts. We're currently paying McKinsey millions of dollars to design a trash can. We don't have to do that.
Mr. Levin.
Last year, we paid out $2 billion in claims against the city. I'll put them on the books of city agencies so they have an incentive to reduce them. They can keep half the savings. It's hundreds of millions of dollars we can save.
Mr. Cuomo.
The city government hasn't been properly managed in 12 years. It needs an overhaul from top to bottom. That's what I think has to be done.
Where'd you start? Where would you start?
I think if housing is a top priority, I would start with HPD because that's one of the first jobs we have to start.
Okay.
What? You're going to cut
I'm still
money from
negotiating the city budget,
housing?
the only one on the stage that's doing this thing.
He's going to cut money
let's
from
just be real
housing.
about
That's
it. The mayor
Cuomo's.
actually
Okay,
implemented
okay.
pegs that took away headcount for many city agencies. So I don't think that we're in the space right now to cut anything. We do need to reform and revamp city agencies. So what we need to do is take a look at, as was said, contracts. We've got a lot of bloated contracts out there, primarily because of the cronyism under Eric Adams.
In this lightning round, just 3 yes or no questions from me. Is it logistically possible, Ms. Adams first, to close Rikers by 2027? Yes or no?
No.
Mr. Cuomo?
No, the law is a joke.
Mr. Lander?
Not a joke, but not by 2027 either.
Mr. Mamdani?
No, Eric Adams has made it functionally impossible.
Mr. Myrie?
No, but it needs to close.
Mr. Stringer?
No.
And Mr. Tilson?
No, not by 2032 either.
We'll go the other order on yes or no. Do you
What a
support an
shit.
expansion of red light cameras, Mr. Tilson?
Absolutely.
Mr. Stringer?
Yes.
Absolutely, and I voted for it in Albany.
Thank you, Mr. Myrie. Mr. Mamdani?
Yes, and unlike Andrew Cuomo, I know you can't turn right on red in New York City.
Ooh.
Yes, and with real accountability.
Even
for drivers who
Tilson
do-
smiled.
Cuomo?
Yes.
Ms.
Yes.
Adams? And one more. We'll start in the middle with Mr. Mamdani. Have you ever voted for a Republican?
No.
Mr. Myrie?
I have not, but I voted for a Democrat that ended up caucusing with the Republicans. That's why I ran for state senate in the 2018.
Mr. Stringer? Ever voted for a Republican, Mr. Stringer?
Never in my life.
Mr. Tilson?
Sure, Bloomberg.
Ms. Adams? No. Mr. Cuomo? No. And Mr. Lander, no.
Boo, Tilson sucks.
It's a two-parter. I'll start with you, Mr. Tilson. What is your favorite park or playground in the city, and would you, as mayor, commit to at least 1% of the city budget's going to the Parks Department?
Yes, I raised 3 daughters in the city. They're now in their 20s. Shout out to my youngest, graduating from college in 2 days, actually. And
shut up.
I ran the Daddy Olympics in Central Park every day.
Shut up.
Circled the park and had a number of favorite playgrounds. I'd say the favorite we called playground number 1, which is at 96th and 5th. And I've actually called for permanently making the parks budget 1% of the city budget, so it increases with the city's budget. Their parks are our gems.
Mr. Stringer.
1% for parks, because every kid deserves outdoors, and we have got to make sure we fix all the parks, not just in wealthy communities. But look, my favorite park is where the kids want to play. So if it's on a basketball court, I'm there. If it's Central Park, I'm there. Rockefeller Park, I'm there. I have no decision making it. It's all up to them.
Mr. Myrie.
My favorite park is Prospect Park, and my parents... Let's go, yeah, Prospect Park in the house. My parents are here in the audience with us, and it is where I learned how to ride a bike. It is where they took me throughout my childhood. So I absolutely would commit to 1% to our city's parks. It's a shame that we have not done that already.
Mr. Mamdani.
I would absolutely commit 1% of the city budget to the Parks Department. I'm proud to have done so over the course of this campaign, and I have to say that my favorite park is Astoria Park.
Mr. Lander.
Zohran Mamdani is right on this question. Prospect Park is the best park in New York City, and my kids are here, and they played baseball and learned to ride their bikes, and I was just at the Celebrate Brooklyn concert opening. Yes, we'll do 1%.
Look at how hateful Cuomo looks.
On the parks that need it most. I passed a law that helps us do that.
He's like,
and as
I
mayor,
hate parks.
I'll make sure we focus on
No
those
more
parks that have been
parks.
way too long neglected.
Thank you, Mr. Cuomo.
Yes to the 1%, and I'd also like to see the private sector get involved with conservancies.
Oh
not
my
just
God.
Central Park, it's beautiful, it's Manhattan, but there are other boroughs also.
Can we sell our
Queens,
parks to
Brooklyn, Bronx, Staten Island,
corporations?
etc.
I'm Andrew
My favorite
Cuomo.
park is Cunningham Park in Queens, and 1%, but let's get conservancies set up for all the parks.
Ms. Adams.
Let's let
We definitely
companies
have to
buy
get to
all
the
the
1%.
parks.
We've been fighting in the council for as long as I've been in the council to get there. My favorite park has to be Baisley Pond Park in Jamaica, Queens, of course. That's my district, my park. But we got to get rid of those Phragmites.
And this is a quick one. It's a 1 or 2 word answer. I'll start with you, Ms. Adams. Which borough have you spent the least amount of time in?
Staten Island.
Mr.
Sorry.
Cuomo.
I would say Staten Island.
Mr. Lander.
Staten Island.
Mr. Mamdani. Uh-oh.
The beacon of free transit, Staten Island.
Mr. Myrie.
I'd say Staten Island.
Mr. Stringer.
I've been doing this. I've been everywhere.
So no, all equal?
They're all equal, including Staten Island.
Mr. Tilson? It was almost a sweep.
Okay. All right, we are going to take a short break now. When we come back, we'll bring you the cross-examination round.
Staten Island is just geographically out of the way, so that's kind of a stupid question. It's like you're not gonna go through Staten Island to go somewhere else. You're just gonna be in Staten Island if you're going around New York. You know what I mean?
Where each candidate will ask one opponent one question. And because this election will require New Yorkers to rank their candidates, we want to take a moment to explain how ranked choice voting works, courtesy of the Campaign Finance Board.
Well, we know how
We'll
it
continue
works.
in just a few minutes.
You just rank the candidates, and then the candidate who gets the least amount of first gets eliminated, and then all of their votes go to whoever they voted they rank second, and you just keep repeating the process. You know what I mean? You eliminate whoever was chosen first the least, and then you give whoever voted for that person, you now give their second choice an extra vote, and you just keep doing that until you get it down to 2 candidates, and then one candidate will have the majority, or you keep going until one candidate has the majority of the votes, basically. We know how this works. It's not that complicated. It's stunning that more places don't do ranked choice, at least. It's not ideal, but it's a lot better than just a first past the post ballot.
Welcome back to our Democratic primary debate for mayor, live from John J.
What was that Who Wants to Be a Millionaire ass music going on? What's going on?
Criminal justice. We're more than halfway through the debate with the 7 leading Democratic candidates. Now it is time for the cross-examination round. That's when each candidate gets a chance to ask one question of one rival. Our order was selected at random, and we'll begin with Scott Stringer.
Tilson's going for Zohran's jugular.
Adrian Adams. So during the City of Yes negotiations...
Why did you ask Adrian Adams anything,
you successfully
weirdo?
Brought billions of dollars... I really do believe we can have a realistic opportunity to take those parcels of land and turn them into affordable housing. Do you envision, or would you sort of signal that that idea could be coupled with funding, the funding that you obtain when you start thinking about your own housing, implement your own housing agenda if you were mayor?
Well, Scott, thank you for the question, and thank you for recognizing that I have ushered in billions of dollars for housing for the people of the city of New York. Thank you for that. As mayor, I would be open to any feasible option of housing, expanding it for the people of the city of New York. We got to continue this. My work has just been the floor and not the ceiling, so I'm more than willing to expand on the great work that I'm still doing.
That was a
as
weird
city council
question.
speaker.
Okay, thank you. Mr.
He basically asked, like, hey, want to hang out, want to work together? What's up with
My
that?
question is also for Speaker Adams. We have seen over the past 2 decades 200,000 black New Yorkers leave this city. We know that this is a top issue for most New Yorkers, the cost of living here. And I'm wondering if you can talk to us about ushering through the city of yes and what.
Sorry. I just want to point out one more thing. Look how much browner Lander is than Zohran. That's so funny to me. Dude is like... That's not just a tan. Something I don't know what happened.
Implications that has for black New Yorkers who are struggling to stay in this city and what we could be building on going forward.
Love the question. Thank you very much, Senator. And again, thank you for referencing the city of yes championed boners.
All right.
Rochdale Village. So this is for their protection.
And right now,
oh yeah, he's going for
Zohran.
Zohran.
Proud member of the Democratic Socialists of America.
Yeah.
You refer to each other as comrade. And right now on the DSA's website, it calls for the government ownership of all major industries, to decriminalize all misdemeanors, including theft and assault, to empty our prisons, and to disarm, dismantle, and defund the police. So your words are very reassuring, but this is what I read from your people, and I wonder if you will disavow this or implement it as mayor.
Yes, like David Dinkins, I am a member of the organization, and the organization's platform is not the platform of this campaign. The platform of this campaign is the one you can find on the website at zohranfornyc.com. That's a platform that is going to deliver an affordable city for New Yorkers who are currently being priced out of what is instead the most expensive city in the United States. It's one that we're going to deliver public safety to each and every New Yorker, and we're going to do so by recognizing the critical role that police have to play in that, and also by creating the Department of Community Safety so that police do not have to do the work of mental health professionals, and that we can follow the example, the evidence-based policies we've seen be successful elsewhere in the country, and start to divert them.
See, I think Tilson's line of attack here would have been more effective if it wasn't from Tilson. But I think at this point, Tilson has exposed himself to be such a slimy freak that, like, nothing coming from him is going to be taken seriously by most voters, I think. So I don't think it really matters.
Those mental health calls outside of the police department so the police department can focus on the 7 major categories of crime.
Okay. Next is from Ms. Adams.
Yes. Thank you. I was looking for Errol to look up because he's confusing me. Oh, okay. Thank you. I have a question for Assemblymember Mamdani. I know how to pronounce your name.
Thank you very much, Speaker Adams.
Assemblymember,
It's only the white people who can't pronounce it. It's so sad. It's not even hard.
I've raised a family in New York. I have over 20 years of experience in the private sector. I have led the city council through many, many challenges, taken this city through 3 successful budgets and billions of dollars in city budgets now, working on our 4th, which will also be successful, and have been continuing this work for a number of years on the city council. In a recent New York Times article, you said that you were the most qualified person to be mayor of the city of New York. Given what I've just laid out, do you think you're more qualified than me to lead the city?
I very much appreciate your work and your leadership and your track record, Speaker. I think that each one of us on the stage will say that we are the most qualified to lead the city, because if we didn't believe that, then we would have no business running for mayor. And ultimately, I believe that because I believe the most pressing crisis we're facing here is one of affordability. And that is something that my campaign has been laser focused on, and that is why I'm proud to say that we are going to address it by freezing the rent for millions of rent-stabilized tenants, by making the slowest buses in the country fast and free, and by delivering universal childcare to each and every New York family.
Mr.
So
Levy,
good.
your turn.
So good.
Peter, will you please stand up? Andrew, this
It was her question was pointless. Her question did nothing. Her question did nothing. Tilson's question was a little bit more. I think Mamdani probably should have spent some time to say, okay, no, you're strawmanning the DSA, but also the DSA's platform is not my platform. He didn't say the first part. He only said the DSA's platform is not my platform. But I think he shouldn't have let Tilson mischaracterize the DSA that way.
is Peter Arbini. He's been trying to ask you a question for 5 years. His father, Norman died because of your disastrous order sending people with COVID into nursing homes. Then, as you admitted this week, you personally altered the state health department report to undercount the death total, to hide the death total, and then evaded and lied to these families for 5 years. So tonight, will you finally apologize to Peter and other grieving New Yorkers, or will you just keep... Or will you just keep gaslighting them with blather about what a great job you claim you did?
Maybe where you come from in St. Louis, facts don't matter. But here they do. So let's talk about that. First of all...
Cuomo hasn't lived in New York City for 30 years. Cuomo hasn't lived in New York City for 30 years. The only reason he's lived in New York City at all is because he's super old.
1.2 million people died of COVID in the United States. It's horrendous. 83,000 people died in New York State. It is horrendous. It was a pandemic unlike anything we have ever seen. When it comes to nursing homes, we now know the facts because numerous studies have been done. New York State implemented the federal guidance set by CMS, CDC, Dr. Fauci. We implemented it. Other states implemented it. That has been proven over and over and over again. When you look at the total death toll in New York, the rate of death in nursing homes, we're number 38 out of 50 states. Only 12 states had a lower rate of death than New York, which is incredible in my opinion, since we had it first and worst, and does not give enough credit to the women and men in those nursing homes who worked so hard. Mr. Arbini lost a father. I am very, very sorry for that. He brought a legal case against the state. The legal case was dismissed. When you look at the papers on the case, there was no COVID positive person sent from a hospital to the nursing home while Mr. Arbini was in the nursing home. So it is factually impossible, Brad, that he got COVID from someone coming from a hospital.
Okay. Mr. Mamdani.
You know, I want to address something first, which is that...
You're going to ask a question or not?
I'm going to ask a question, but Brad Lander is more of a New Yorker than Andrew Cuomo is, and to hear all of this... To hear all this about St. Louis, we have to just make this clear. Yeah. Now, all of us on this stage...
Wait, who are you going to ask your question to?
I'm asking it to Andrew Cuomo.
Okay.
I feel like most people would have known I'm going to ask Andrew Cuomo the question.
I knew. And you knew.
We did. We both knew.
We knew. We agree.
All of us on this stage have spoken about how Donald Trump is an existential threat to democracy, to the city, to this country.
The moderators are shit. Did you see how many times they just tried to interrupt him there as he was like, when he was trying to start his question even? Oh my God.
And Andrew Cuomo, you have received millions of dollars in funding from the very billionaires who put Donald Trump back into office. Will you now look at the camera and tell your super PAC to return those millions of dollars, and to your own campaign to return that close to $500,000 to ensure that this is not a race that is bought by those same Trump billionaires?
I know.
That's a really good question.
I know you don't understand the law, but it would be illegal for me to direct an independent expenditure committee.
Is it illegal for you to direct your own campaign?
One question, one answer.
So that's the law, okay? Number two, I dealt with Mr. Trump as governor. We had very, very difficult times. I got more help for New York from Trump than anyone expected. New York was one of the few places that he did not send in troops when he sent them everywhere else because he didn't want to deal with me. That's the fact. I got him to send us masks.
So are you going to return the $500,000 to your own campaign?
And then on your point about, billionaires, let's remember this. I am the candidate on the stage who is supported by more labor unions than any other candidate. 650,000 working men and women support me.
Then why is it that J.D. Vance went to more picket lines than you did?
Let me finish, because they know me and they know my record. The firefighters worked with me in storms. The utility workers endorsed me because I was in Puerto Rico putting the power back together after the storms. Every major union that has endorsed has endorsed me greater than any candidate on the stage.
You get the final question, Mr. Cuomo.
Yeah.
You get the final question to anyone on the stage. Yes.
My question is to Mr. Tilson.
Barely anyone claps.
We learned today that,
Tilson.
Shockingly, Mr. Mamdani is not part of the DSA, but We've heard his plans over and over and over. You're a financial man. You're not a politician, Mr. Tilson. Probably smarter than the rest of us in that regard.
You know what this feels like? It feels like phone a friend. It feels like Cuomo's really struggling here, and so he's gonna use his lifeline to phone a friend here and say, "Hey, Mr. Tilson, can you shit on Zohran for me?"
But you've heard his plans for how to build housing, how he's going to finance the housing, free
So
buses.
he's not cross-examining Tilson. In other words, he's not doing this part of the debate. You're supposed to investigate another candidate for their policies or whatever, but he's asking Tilson to critique Mamdani as his question. Instead of asking Mamdani something, he's gonna ask Tilson to criticize Mamdani. That is chicken shit. That is chicken shit.
Is how he's going to build grocery stores, and he said
he's scared of talking to Zohran.
And our taxes will not be any higher than New Jersey's tax.
Remember when he said he knew Zohran would ask him a question? It's because he's been afraid of it for like 40 minutes or more than that. He probably laid awake in bed the night before this thinking like, what if Zohran asks me a question? Oh my god, he's gonna ask me a question. What if I pee myself on the stage? Like, and instead of asking a question himself, he just asked Tilson to shit on Zohran. This is so that's so chicken shit. I can't believe it.
Question. You're a financial expert. You've heard this 157 times. Is it feasible and financially possible that he is telling the truth?
I would say no. The biggest piece of his, he says he will raise the revenue to pay for all the things that I can't even keep track of, all the spending promises he's making, by raising the corporate tax rate to New Jersey's level. What he is failing to acknowledge is that there are already many other city and state taxes that, in fact, if his plan were implemented, would result in New York City businesses paying double the tax rate of New Jersey, triple that of Connecticut, 5 times that of Florida, which would lead to an exodus of businesses and jobs and crush our city. But even more preposterous.
That's a conspiracy. Capital flight is a conspiracy theory. The idea that companies on Wall Street are going to move somewhere else because taxes are... There ain't another Wall Street. There isn't a Wall Street in Miami, okay? It's New York City. People aren't going to leave New York, the financial hub of the world. Companies are not going to leave that because taxes are a bit higher. That's a completely... This is almost as insane when he said the only way to deal with crime was more policing. The only way to reduce crime is more policing. It's almost as insane as that. I mean, obviously more policing means the crime statistics are probably going to go up, if anything. But anyway.
Is that this all has to go through Albany. There is no appetite for what he is calling for. And even if it were to pass the corporate tax rate increase statewide, he's assuming that all the taxes all around the state, the legislature would just hand it to New York City. That's truly delusional. So I want to double taxes in New York City. I want to double spending in New York City. But I want to do it the way Mike Bloomberg did it, by doubling the size of the economy, which he did over 12 years. It's economic growth that we need.
Do people still like Bloomberg in New York?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, candidates. We're going to move on to a new topic, and I'm going to ask you as we come down the home stretch. We're in our final half hour. We're going to keep everything a little tighter, and I'll thank you in advance for your cooperation. Let's talk about the fact that even before the war between Israel and Hamas, an unofficial but important task of every New York City mayor has been to bring New Yorkers together, even on issues of passionate concern where finding common ground is difficult. So let's talk for a few minutes about what kind of job you would do in this area. Mr. Mamdani, what is your message to Jewish New Yorkers who are supportive of Israel and fear for their safety in this current political climate?
Oh my God.
That I hear them, and that I...
How many questions have they asked Mamdani about Israel, and how many questions have they asked the other candidates about Israel? Of course, the other candidates didn't even have to be asked about Israel, because when they were asked, where would you visit first as New York mayor, most of them said Israel. Most of them offered up their fealty and their loyalty to Israel without even being asked. Mamdani, meanwhile, this is like, they've asked him in 2 debates, they've like directed over 5. I remember when what was that question? Yeah, it was the question about where would you visit first? And Mamdani just said, oh, I'm going to stay in New York and then help New Yorkers that way. And then unprompted, the moderator who's besties with Cuomo's staffer is like, do you believe in Israel's right to exist? Like, just completely non sequitur, just out of nowhere. And fuck. Ask him about something. Ask him about buses. Ask him about, like, I don't know, healthcare, ask him about something that affects people's lives, please.
I've heard them over the course of this campaign and before that. After the days of the horrific war crime of October 7th, a friend of mine told me about how he felt sitting in a synagogue for Shabbat services when he heard the door open and a chill went up his spine as he turned around, not knowing who would be there. And I heard that even just recently from a Jewish man in Williamsburg who told me how he locks the very door that used to be unlocked for so many years out of a concern for his safety. I will protect Jewish New Yorkers and deliver them that safety. I will do so as the next mayor of the city. And ultimately, what I will also say is to New Yorkers who have a disagreement with me on any issue, but also on the question of the Israeli government's policies, that disagreement, I know, is rooted in a shared sense of humanity. And in the words of Ed Koch, if you agree with me on 9 out of 12 issues, vote for me. 12 out of 12, see a psychiatrist.
And just as a follow-up, Mr. Mamdani, when it comes to the boycott and divestment movement aimed at Israel, which you have supported even before this campaign, what would you say to people who feel that that is an existential threat and that despite your position of wanting to keep people safe, they feel like you actually either have a different agenda or...
You can't keep... So the moderator's question is... How do you expect to keep New Yorkers safe when you support sanctions on Israel? What the fuck? That has nothing to... How is sanctioning Israel and, like, how is not doing trade with Israel a threat to the safety of New Yorkers? What the fuck are we even talking about here?
Are in league with people who have an agenda that makes them feel fundamentally unsafe.
Oh
I've
my
been
God.
very clear, and I will continue to be so, which is that at the core of my politics is a belief in nonviolence, and that my support for compliance with international law is support for nonviolent movements that seek to do so and build on the example that we saw with South Africa. And ultimately, what my focus will be, however, is not on what is happening outside of the city. It is going to be on making sure this is a city that is affordable for each and every New Yorker. What is currently the most expensive city in the country finally be one that the working class New Yorkers who built it can afford to live in, and to ensure that each and every New Yorker feels represented by me as their mayor. Because you can win an election with a majority, but it is your job to represent every single person across the city.
Hey.
Okay. Mr. Cuomo, according to Muslim American organizations, you never made a public visit to a mosque during your 10-plus years as governor.
One day ago.
Why the reluctance?
Yeah, I believe I have. I would have to check the record. But let me correct the record here, if I might.
Look at that.
Mr. Mamdani,
as they boo Cuomo.
Wait, let me,
and this just happened tonight, and this is gonna probably make Cuomo look a bit worse and probably make Mamdani look a little bit better. He's winning, man. Anyone you know in New York, get them out now. All hands on deck. It's time.
Ask you about this because this was an issue in the 2018 campaign when you were running for re-election, when they said that in 7 years you had never visited a mosque. Did something happen in the several years beyond that?
I believe I have. I know I've participated in many forums with imams. I am not.
You know what the craziest thing about all this racism is? Like, they're treating Mamdani like he's Arab, but I'm pretty sure he's Indian, right? One sec. Yeah, he's Indian.
Off the top of my head, I can't tell you where I went, but I'll check the record and I will.
So let me just get to the point then. I mean,
he might be like a Muslim from a Muslim Indian family, but like I don't know. It's just such vague racism towards.
I would say we are a city of immigrants. I welcome them. I love them. I'm not Mr. Mamdani. I'm not anti-Semitic. I'm not divisive. I didn't say I would boycott Israel. I didn't say I would divest from Israel. I didn't say I would sanction Israel. I don't give forums to anti-Semites. I don't give forums to extremists who blame America for 9/11. I didn't say that I would boycott Cornell Technion because they're pro-Israel. He is the flip side of the coin of Trump. Trump says he'll boycott Cornell because they're anti-Israel. He says, I'll boycott Cornell because they're pro-Israel. Division is our death in this city, this state, and this nation.
Listen to that scaremongering.
Division is what Trump sells. We should be selling unity, not the division that this man is spreading.
Mr. Mamdani.
Unite with the sexual assaulter. people are booing
ridiculous.
Cuomo's run his whole campaign on fear-mongering and mispronouncing Mamdani's last name, and then he looks people in the eye and says, "We need to run on unity." Unlike Mamdani, who I hate. Mamdani, sorry, because he can't say the name
Mr.
right.
Cuomo talk about himself as a man of unity, when just yesterday we found out that his super PAC was sending mail that artificially darkened and lengthened my beard to stoke the very fears of that division in this city. The reason he doesn't have a message for Muslim New Yorkers is because he has nothing to say to us, because he doesn't see us as if we are every other New Yorker. And ultimately, the campaign that I am running is a campaign that seeks to go beyond the politics of the Trump era, where candidates on the stage describe me as a monster, describe me at the gates, where they say that I am, in fact, the other. This is a campaign to bring people together.
Wait, he just said that Mamdani's vision is the death of New York, and in the same breath he said, and that's why we need more unity. Like, what the fuck?
Why we have the support of Jewish and Muslim New Yorkers. It's why we have the support of people across the 5 boroughs.
Real quick. Yeah, you don't bring New Yorkers together by saying President Obama is evil and President Obama is a liar. You don't bring them together by saying Hakeem Jeffries is like George Wallace and the DIS sending ads to Hakeem Jeffries with watermelons. Koch didn't say what you said he said. He said anyone who threatens Israel, I would never support.
Okay.
That's what Koch says, and that's you.
We're going to bring in the other candidates. I want you to
not
tell me,
divisive at all.
60 seconds and keep it a real 60 seconds. What would you do as far as bringing people together around this particular issue, which has brought people into the streets and caused so much controversy in New York?
Errol, all New Yorkers deserve to feel safe, no matter who they are. As City Council Speaker, I have allocated millions of dollars to combat anti-Semitism. As mayor, I will fully fund to protect all New Yorkers. I just don't even like this. Our current mayor has.
This topic is so gross to me because, like obviously anti-Semitism is a real problem, but the way they weaponize it in these kind of debates, like the only reason anti-Semitism is such a focus in this debate is because they think they can wield it in a racist way against the Muslim who might win, and they don't want him to win. Like, that's it. This isn't like a genuine attempt to bring attention to anti-Semitism. They're weaponizing anti-Semitism in a cynical way to attack Mamdani, and that's it. And so, like, I'm not trying to seem dismissive when I skip over this section. It's kind of the opposite. Like, I just recognize that this isn't like a genuine attempt to like raise awareness around anti-Semitism. This is just like, obviously, judging by the 10 questions that Mamdani's already gotten in these 2 debates about Israel, obviously it's just a cudgel that they're trying to wield against Mamdani. They're just trying to like scare otherwise progressive New Yorkers away from supporting Mamdani, and that's the only reason to bring up anti-Semitism. So I'm just not here for any of this.
I fight like hell to keep it that way. You can't have to look over your shoulder every time you go to a Jewish communal.
All right, stop fear-mongering, Jesus.
Your full self. And
they're good at like that kind of talk is just gonna make more people scared. You know what I mean? Like there's probably Jewish people like, I haven't been looking over my shoulder this whole time. Maybe I better start. Like, it's so stupid.
And not feel like you are threatened by violence.
All right,
I am not confused about what I believe in or who I am.
And we through my wife and 3 daughters, we've been members of Central Synagogue for 25 years, and I can tell you, New Yorkers, Jewish New Yorkers, don't feel safe. In the audience today are 2 Columbia University students, both Jewish, David and Maya. They have had their education disrupted, have been harassed, cursed at. David's twin brother, also at Columbia, was punched in the face by one of these mobs, and I hold the people inciting these mobs, the leaders.
If he was punched in the face, I'm guessing that's because he was a counter-protester, and he went in to try to fuck with the peaceful protesters, and then one of the peaceful protesters decided we're going to defend ourselves and punched him.
Yes, Zohran Mamdani.
The only time the protests at Columbia got violent was when like counter protesters, right wingers who like generally didn't even go to the school or live in the city, came onto campus to kind of like agitate and try to, in some cases, physically assault peaceful protesters and break up their encampments and like literally just break their things. And so, yeah, it got violent because the student protesters were like, hey, you outside thugs aren't going to be allowed to just like physically assault us. We're going to like defend ourselves. And this guy turns that into, oh, violent anti-Semitic mobs on campuses. Like, he's a Trump supporter at this point. You're a Trump supporter, guy. I'm not listening to another word out of your mouth.
I'm being smeared.
Genocide and apartheid, when you call for divestment and all, that is inciting these mobs. And he says shared sense of humanity.
Oh, so now it's Zohran's fault that there's anti-Semitism. Okay.
Humanity and all these nice sounding words, but he has a double standard because if you search,
it's insane. It's especially insane when you consider that this ghoul's backers are the same billionaire hedge fund people who back Trump. But Zohran is responsible for anti-Semitism. You have a literal dude in the White House who said there's good people on both sides at a neo-Nazi rally. And now you're blaming anti-Semitism on the fucking socialist dude who's not in a position of power, at least not yet, but he probably will. I really hope Mamdani wins just to fuck with this guy. I really hate this guy.
15,000 tweets. Sudan, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia don't appear, yet the word Israel appears more than 50 times. The word genocide appears more than 26 times. So that tells you where his heart is.
Okay. Briefly. I am being smeared for echoing the same words as Israeli historians Amos Goldberg and Daniel Blattman. I am being mischaracterized on the stage for echoing the same words of a former Israeli Prime Minister, Ehud Olmert, who said recently, what we are doing in Gaza is a war of devastation. It is indiscriminate, limitless, cruel, and criminal killing of civilians. I say these things because far too often we take what can be a place of disagreement and instead start to broach beyond that. And these kinds of characterizations, they are part and parcel of what leads to the dehumanization in our city, which is why an elected official in our own city has called for me to be deported. It cannot be disentangled from what's going on right now.
Okay.
Thank you, candidate.
Thank you. This next question is about education. As mayor, you would be leading the largest public school system in the country with more than 900,000 students, all with differing needs. Mr. Tilson, you made education your campaign's focus, one of its focuses, and have been critical of the current performance of the city's public school system. One of the new challenges the next mayor will face is a new requirement to limit the number of students in a class. How would your administration handle this class size bill?
I oppose this class size mandate. It's
he wants bigger classes.
Going to balloon the already $40 billion budget.
Oh, we can't pay for more teachers. No way, no how. We can't. That's crazy talk. You're a radical revolutionary socialist if you want to pay for more teachers. That's impossible. We can't possibly do that. In fact, we should have less teachers. And he said himself, the first thing he wants to cut is their Department of Education in New York.
About $1.6 billion a year. And this has been, it is disproportionately low-income minorities in a system that by and large
mandate. It is the mandate.
Wait, did he get any claps?
I will put the interests of kids first in a system that by and large today runs for the benefit of adults.
Great, thank you. Ms. Adams, same question, the class size bill. How you would handle as mayor the class size bill?
Yeah, thank you very much. No matter how we feel about the class size mandate, it is the mandate. So it is something that we have to follow. I too believe that, as one coming from Southeast Queens, I was education chairperson of my community board, and I can tell you that I walked into many a classroom over the past 15 years or so and have seen the effects of.
Thank you. Mr. Myrie, same question.
So as many of you probably already know, I'm a proud public school kid, went to PS 161 in Crown Heights. They are the crown jewel of this city. I would not be here without it. I think it's really important that we invest in our schools. The reduction of class sizes was something I was proud to vote for in the state legislature because we know the data tells us that smaller class sizes have better outcomes for the students and for the teachers. But
you know what? Sneaker Guy is a solid number 2 at this point. You know what? He's been doing stuff enough that I'm like, you're a solid number 2. Like, I don't trust. See, the thing is, I don't trust that he's as good as he says he is, because I think he's trying to posture as progressive as possible to maybe be seen in the same league as Zohran. But I think he's still like reasonably progressive based on what he said about his background. I gotta acknowledge. Yeah, you're if you are lying, you're not like actually a fascist, you're actually just like a whatever kind of liberal. So, this is my number 2 at this point.
Also like to see some more investment in our mental health for our students. We have not appreciated what has happened over COVID.
Also, he showed real leadership in how he wore sneakers, and now that old dude, Mr. Stringer, is also wearing sneakers. And I just want to acknowledge his leadership on that issue. So yeah, I think this is my strong number 2.
19, the learning loss that is going to have impacts for many years to come. We have to support our students. We have to support our providers. And in addition to that, y'all know what I'm going to say, one after school for all. Every kid in this city, from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. We need it, and we need it now. That is what I'm going to do as the next mayor.
Thank you. And this is another education issue. This question will be for you, Mr. Mamdani. What's one thing you would do to improve education for students with significant or complex abilities who can't be served by their neighborhood schools?
No, I think first and foremost, we need to ensure that they all...
That's such a niche, weird question to ask him. Like, they won't ask him about his plans. They have to ask him about, like, some special... Whereas when they asked Tilson, they just gave it to him. They're just like, say whatever you want about education. And now they're, like, trying to, like... This is like a gotcha in the sense of, like, if Mamdani hasn't been thinking about this and doesn't have a prepared answer. They're trying to get him on a question he doesn't have prepared. This is very bad moderating, very biased moderating.
Also have high-quality tutoring, which we've seen some steps towards. Part of this also comes back to the ability to attract and retain teachers across the DOE. And currently what we're seeing is that on this discussion of class size mandate, we would need to hire estimates, say, close to 10,000 teachers. When we're talking about paraprofessionals, we have so many vacant positions because these positions simply do not pay enough. I support legislation in the council 1261, which would create a recurring annual bonus so that we can actually fill those positions. Because ultimately, what every child and what every parent of that child deserves is the same high-quality, excellent public education. And we need to ensure that every single dollar we spend is a dollar that goes towards that. Because as some of my fellow candidates have said, there is too much money in the DOE that is currently being spent on consulting and contracts that are duplicative, that are not standardized, and that could actually be redirected back into the classroom to ensure that every single child is receiving that education.
Thank you. Mr. Stringer, the same question.
Well, I'm the candidate on this stage who has real skin in the game. I have 2 kids in middle school right now, and I see what overcrowded classrooms mean to them and to their friends. And so the bottom line is, if you want quality education, you got to have smaller class sizes. And I have to tell you, you go to
that's obvious to anyone with a brain. I'm actually surprised Tilson doesn't want smaller classes because that's just such an obvious thing to anyone with a brain.
It needs a little extra, and the kids with parents who have resources, they get it. But the kids who don't struggle, and I want to stop that and end that.
Thank you. Continuing on with education for Mr. Cuomo, over the last decade, the expansion of free pre-K and 3K has been used by hundreds of thousands of New York families. But there have been issues with implementation and even critics who say other educational initiatives should be prioritized. What would be your administration's commitment to these programs?
Well, we pioneered pre-K on the state side, and we're very proud of it. The more we can do, the better. But let's be realistic about education. We all agree, and you've heard many good ideas here. We want more paraprofessionals, more teacher centers, more after-school care, smaller class size.
No, they don't all agree about that. Tilson doesn't agree about that.
We also have a terrible fiscal problem, and this is before the Trump tsunami. So if the state is going to mandate a smaller class size, and we can say, let's agree it's a good idea, the state has to pay for a smaller class size. Otherwise, we're just going to be savaging other parts of the budget. And part of the mayor's job is to advocate for New York City and to have state legislators say, we think it's a great idea, here's the mandate, you must do it, but we're not going to fund it is disingenuous. There's an old expression, passing the buck without passing the bucks. Yes, smaller class size. Please help us fund it so we don't savage other parts of education.
Shut up. That's such a concern troll. It's New York. Put a fucking 0.01% tax on speculative trading on Wall Street, and you'll be able to pay for classrooms all across the country. That's such a stupid concern. We can't afford more teachers. Those are like the most expensive thing. Like, shut up. Just shut up.
Thank you, Mr. Lander.
My mom is here, who's a lifelong public elementary school guidance counselor.
Like, if you live in America and you honestly, like, if the richest country in the world can't afford to pay teachers, if the richest city and the richest country in the world can't afford to pay teachers, then let's just give up on schools, you know? Like, the city can pay for teachers. The city does not want to tax the rich, is what Cuomo is saying.
And both my kids are pre-K to 12 public New York City public school students. The New York Times opinion.
It's amazing to me though. Like, can people take that seriously? Like, if people hear, yeah, we can't afford teachers. There's no. How could New York City possibly afford more teachers? Like, does anyone hear that and think like he's got a point? He's got a point. On the other hand, the police, we need to hire about 20,000 more police, but we can't have more teachers, or we'll have to take money away from everything else because that's just unaffordable. Like, seriously, how do you run on a platform where you say we can't afford more teachers, but we can afford more cops? Who do you represent at that point? Like, not humans, not normal people.
A different kind of public safety question. Mr. Stringer, you go first in this round. The city says there were 252 traffic deaths last year. That's a far cry from zero, as in the name Vision Zero that Mayor de Blasio gave to the city's initiative on this. What would you do, then we'll go down the row, to get us much closer to zero traffic fatalities?
Let's go down the thing.
Look, I think that we have to own up to the fact that
to get them to obey traffic laws. So what would your response to the original question and that listener be?
All in 1 minute.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you, Elizabeth, for the question. If you are listening right now, I'll take that first. You know, the key.
Wait, so they gave him 2 questions, but he gets the same amount of time? Good God, they want Mamdani to lose. They're working every time they ask him a question. It's unfair. They either interrupt him at the start, or they ask him like a weird question about Israel or about some niche topic instead of letting him talk about their plans. And now they're just like, they're using every tactic in the book on how to be a shitty debate moderator and try to make one candidate not come across as good.
The thing here is we have to understand that so many of the violations of our laws as pertaining to our streetscape.
I don't know if this debate has given him a fair question yet.
Are also violations that are the natural result of an economic model of these food delivery apps. When we're talking about so many of the delivery workers, the orders that they have to deliver within a time frame, there's no way for them to be able to obey the laws of the road. And one of those apps is DoorDash. DoorDash has given Andrew Cuomo's super PAC $1 million. That is why when you get those mailers that are lying about me, you see the top 3 donors at the bottom, one of them is DoorDash. The reason they give that money is because they want to influence labor and street safety regulations. They want to ensure they can continue to operate with impunity. I'm going to ensure we come back to a streetscape that is actually one of coherence and order, and we're going to do that by taking on those apps. To your original question, what we need to do is finally fulfill the streets master plan. We are so many miles behind the building of bus lanes and protected bike lanes. Those are critical, not just for safety, but also to ensure that we are finally following the law, which is something that Andrew Cuomo would find to be just guidance, not a requirement.
Mr. Cuomo, your turn.
Yeah. I think Mr. Mamdani starts with the assumption that if you receive money from someone, then you will do what they want. That may work for him, but I'm not for rent and I'm not for sale. So we wonder who's funding DSA and who's funding his BDS movement. On the specific question...
Campaign Finance Board, and you can see all the donations.
Yeah. On the specific question, if I could do it again, I passed the law on e-bikes in Albany. Legislature passed it also, but I signed it. We left it up to local regulation. That was a mistake, because here in New York City, the local regulation has been slow. The bikes are moving too quickly. It's mayhem. Too many people are getting hurt. I would have the apps responsible to license the bike, and they have the responsibility.
By the way, I like this attempt when they're asking about like street safety. Cuomo still tries to bring it back to Israel. He's like, well, who funds you, Mr. BDS? Like, as if BDS is a campaign. It's not an organization. They don't like fund candidates. Like, his comment didn't even make sense. And again, he's just trying to bring it back to Israel. Like, I'm amazed at just like how openly like evil a lot of these people are, and a lot of their questions and answers are. It's crazy.
For tickets that are issued to that bike, it's their financial liability. They police it. I would reduce the speed limit down to 15 miles per hour, period. Because if you're riding a city bike, you are as much a subject of the speeding e-bike as anybody else.
Thank you. Ms. Adams.
Yes. The thing that no one is speaking about, when you're looking at planning, there is a city agency that is responsible for that. They are called the DOT. So, you know, as leader of the city council, we have been in oversight with the DOT many, many, many times. And as one of my colleagues mentioned, they are not in compliance with the streets master plan. The agency entrusted by the mayor of the city of New York is not in compliance. And we have had hearing after hearing after hearing. The bottom line is that DOT needs some tweaking in order for us to get get this right. So my commissioner, as mayor, would be one that is able to handle the work put before him or her to do the work that the Department of Transportation is mandating.
Or moped, and if you are an older adult, that is a really scary prospect. So without question, there has to be regulation, but the demand is created by us. And the apps
Good thing we didn't
many,
watch
many,
this
many
live,
times
so we could go on
demand should have some
1.25
responsibility
speed
and accountability to ensure that things are safe. As you have heard, we are out of compliance with the law. There are new categories of vehicles on our streets that need to be regulated, and our streets master plan must be implemented. I want to ensure that we have protected bike lanes and that we have more bus lanes. But I was proud in Albany to vote for a super speeder bill because we have too many reckless drivers on the road who have done and demonstrated that they don't belong on the road.
We're coming to the end of the debate. Mr. Tilson, briefly.
Yes, I was almost death number 253 last year. I was hit on my bike crossing Park Avenue.
It's unfortunate he didn't die.
And so I ride my bike almost every day in the city. I agree completely with Zelnor about these super speeders. As far as I'm concerned, there cannot be enough of these cameras that automatically catch and ticket people who run red lights and who are speeders. And I think we can use technology both for e-bikes and for cars that
That's not allowing the government to surveil everyone. Just wait till Trump says he's going to arrest the mayor of New York unless they let Palantir install their softwares on all the city's cameras. Just wait.
Speedgate. So I actually am glad to see that Mayor Adams recently adopted something I've been calling for months, that e-bikes cannot go faster. It has to be built into the bike, cannot go faster than 15 miles an hour. And anyone who's a chronic speeder, you can revoke their license, of course, but an alternative middle path is you can install technology in the car that does not allow them to break the speed limit.
Thank you very much.
Okay, candidates, we are just about done. We're going to have time for just a couple of lightning round questions because we've got literally something like a minute left.
A question about the insanity of just like America in general. Why are they talking about speed limits of bikes within the city limits, but they don't say the same thing for a car? I gotta tell ya, cars cause more deaths than e-bikes, and I also have to tell you, cars go a lot faster than e-bikes. But there's no fucking clamp down on that, because of course not, because the automotive industrial complex dominates these people's backers, right? They're not gonna do anything that could even slightly threaten, even slightly make cars a less attractive option. Like, we're gonna install software in your car so that if you're within city boundaries, your car's not gonna go over the speed limit. That would be what they should do if they're gonna do that with e-bikes, but they're not gonna do that with heavily polluting, expensive, more dangerous cars. But they will do that with less polluting e-bikes that overwhelmingly poor people use. So if you're a rich person, you can still speed around in New York in your sports car. If you're a poor person trying to make your delivery times on an e-bike, well, fuck you. That's Tilson's vision.
So let's go with a show of hands. Should the city increase the number of permits for street vendors? Hands up are Mr. Tilson and Mr. Stringer and everybody. Okay, across the board. From what
the audience is laughing because Cuomo looked down there and then raised his hand.
There's no room for discussion here. Legal cannabis shops, are they good for the city on balance? Mr. Cuomo says yes. Nobody else?
If they're properly regulated.
Mr. Mamdani, yes. Okay. Oh boy, you got one of those.
One lightning round question. Everybody probably wants to know the answer of. Raise your hand if you know who you're ranking second on your ballot.
There you go.
Mr. Tilson, who is it?
Andrew Cuomo.
Ew.
Nobody else.
Those boos. Oh my god, I'm rewinding. That gives me life. I need to. That boo is so funny. Oh, New York, I love you. Let's listen to that boo again.
Raise your hand if you know who you're ranking second on your.
That lady was booing like they tried to take away her pizza. What's going on? That was amazing.
There you go.
Mr. Tilson, who is it?
Andrew Cuomo.
It's not me.
Nobody else.
Dude, Lander loves Zoran's joke there.
I am devastated.
He thought it was a great one.
Should penalties be increased for fare beating in the subways?
Going to say who you're ranking second? All right.
Should penalties be increased for fare beating
That
in the
was
subways?
hilarious.
No?
No hands?
They're not enforced.
Okay, and then I guess who here still reads actual printed newspapers? Everybody.
These are not hand-raised questions, and I'll start with you, Ms. Adams. Other than rent or mortgage, name one expensive thing in New York you wish was cheaper, very fast.
Other than rent or mortgage? Groceries.
Groceries, Mr. Cuomo.
Yeah, food.
Food, Mr. Lander.
Childcare.
Childcare, Mr. Mamdani.
Childcare.
Mr. Myrie.
Childcare.
Mr. Stringer.
100% childcare.
Mr. Tilson.
Groceries.
And starting with Mr. Tilson, name a politician you have a good relationship with. Quickly.
Cory Booker.
Cory Booker. Mr. Stringer.
Mostly everyone on stage.
Mr. Myrie.
Majority Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins.
Mr. Mamdani.
Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who I'm proud to be endorsed by.
Mr. Lander.
Hell yeah.
Childcare.
Mr. Stringer.
100% childcare.
Wait, who said
Groceries.
Booker?
And starting with Mr. Tilson, name a politician you have a good relationship with. Quickly.
Cory Booker.
Okay, Cory Booker is a fraud. He's a fed. Don't trust Cory Booker. I've heard enough sketchy things about him. I think the fact that Tilson here is close to Cory Booker is enough for me to say Cory's out. And I'm sorry, because I really like Rosario Dawson. I think she's amazing. And she's a Bernie Sanders supporter, actually. I'm pretty sure Cory Booker's wife prefers Bernie Sanders politics to Cory Booker's, and that's pretty sad. Anyway.
Booker. Mr. Stringer.
Mostly everyone on stage.
Mr. Myrie.
Majority Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins.
Mr. Mamdani.
Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who I'm proud to be endorsed by.
Mr. Lander.
State Senator Liz Kruger.
Mr. Cuomo.
Yep. Mike Bloomberg, David Patterson, thank you for the endorsement.
Ew.
Ms. Adams.
Attorney General Tish James.
Okay.
She loves
For
it.
this debate, I want to thank the candidates and our partners and all of you at home for
right.
watching. If you missed any part of this debate, you can see it in its entirety
All
at
right.
ny1.com and the Spectrum News YouTube account. That's where you can also find our other primary debates. Remember, early voting begins this Saturday. Primary day is on June 24th. Thank you for watching and listening.
What's
and
the
have a
rest
great
of
evening.
it? What's the rest of this? Wait, I just want to go back a minute. Hold on. I need to hear that one more time.
From what you know, and there's no room for discussion here, legal cannabis shops.
Wait.
Discussion here. Legal. Mr. Mamdani, yes. Okay. Oh, boy. You got one of those?
Here you go. I just need to hear this one more time.
Raise your hand if you know who you're ranking second on your ballot.
There you go.
Mr. Tilson, who is it?
Andrew Cuomo.
It's not me.
Nobody else.
I am
Nobody
devastated.
else going to say who you're ranking second? All right.
The moderator, it was the moderator in the middle. He laughs his ass off at Mamdani being like, it wasn't me.
Should penalties be increased for fare beating in the subways?
Amazing. Anyway, that was what I wanted to watch here.
In Cuomo's grill, like in a very, I think, in a very personal way, not just you're a politician, you lie, blah blah blah. It's like you're a sexual harasser, but like right in his face, and then also the same thing with Mamdani and Cuomo. It was very personal, and whether it separates people and lets them rise to the top and get above Andrew Cuomo, that remains to be seen. But that was my kind of gut on the whole thing.
I mean, I think similarly, we talked about before the debate, Brad Lander picked up this unconventional New York Times endorsement today. I think he was emboldened. I think he came onto that debate stage ready to remind viewers that he had been endorsed by the New York Times, even if it was slightly different than it has been in the past.
At least 3 times we counted that he mentioned that.
Yeah, and well, he should if he thinks that will help his campaign. But to Greg's point, he was also much more on the attack in a more direct way than I think we saw in the first debate. I remember in the first debate, his line that stuck in my head was, I have a plan for that. I have a detailed plan for that. And while I think that resonated with Cuomo, because you heard Cuomo sort of jab back, we know that a lot of people have plans, but it's about execution. Lander was not pulling any punches. He went after him on sexual harassment. He went after him on the MTA.
Yeah, that was fun. Lander's like
over immigration policy, similar to what's unfolding in Los Angeles.
Because a couple of hundred immigrant workers got cheated out of $2.5 million and their health care, and the orders came from on high.
Yeah, so you say.
So that exchange started when Brad Lander pressed Andrew Cuomo about subway cleaners that were hired by the MTA when Andrew Cuomo was governor. And Brad Lander, he also had several questions about Andrew Cuomo and his.
Here's our future mayor of NYC.
Most people would be somewhere in between, but yeah, we had some good ones. I would tell you more, but I think we're going to need them for some other debates.
That's right. All right, Errol, excellent job tonight. We're going to leave you now to go to our own Bernadette Hogan, who is in the spin room at John Jay College. She has some live reaction from the candidates themselves, who just got off the stage a minute ago. I believe Zohran Mamdani is with Bernadette now. Hey, Bernadette.
Hey there, Bobby, and that's right. The candidates just walked off the stage, and I have with me now Zohran Mamdani, the 33-year-old youngest candidate in this Democratic primary. And Mamdani, I want to talk to you first about that question. The inexperienced criticism is something that both Andrew Cuomo and a couple other candidates were trying to poke a hole in a lot of your messaging tonight. What did you make of that, and do you think that they were successful?
I think that Andrew Cuomo would rather talk about my record than his, because his is a record of cutting Medicaid. It's a record of stealing hundreds of millions of dollars from the MTA. It's a record of hounding the more than 13 women who have come forward to credibly accuse him of sexual harassment. And my record is one that I'm proud of. It's a record where I have fought and won for working class New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs. And the crowd today was Richard Chow, who was a taxi driver that I organized with over many, many months, who lost his brother to suicide because of the level of debt in that crisis. And together, we won $450 million in debt relief. And tonight was an example of that track record and the willingness of New Yorkers and the desire to turn the page on the experience we've already seen.
Now, another point that came up that you continued to correct Andrew Cuomo about is the pronunciation.
He's amazing in interviews. Holy shit.
Of your name. Now, this also came into multiple questions about his inability or his refusal to visit mosques in his previous years as governor, and then since then. What do you make of all this, and do you think that that was a pointed attack against you, and do you see something beyond that, perhaps?
It's frankly troubling. You know, New Yorkers deserve a mayor who sees in each of them the humanity that they have, and that is the mayor that I'm seeking to be. But to see a candidate for this same position be either unable or unwilling to say my name correctly, it's not that difficult. It's Mamdani, Mamdani, and to even name a single mosque that he would have visited over 10 years in leadership. I mean, we have 1 million Muslims living in New York City.
Yeah, that's really bad.
I'm seeking to be
in his previous years as governor, and then since then. What do you make of all this, and do you think that that was a pointed attack to correct Andrew Cuomo about is the pronunciation of your name? Now, this also came into multiple questions about his inability or his refusal to visit mosques in his previous years as governor, and then since then. What do you make of all this, and do you think that that was a pointed attack against you, and do you see something beyond that, perhaps?
It's frankly troubling. You know, New Yorkers deserve a mayor who sees in each of them the humanity that they have, and that is the mayor that I'm seeking to be. But to see a candidate for this same position be either unable or unwilling to say my name correctly, it's not that difficult. It's Mamdani, Mamdani, and to even name a single mosque that he would have visited over 10 years in leadership. I mean, we have 1 million Muslims living in New York City. You have to ensure that Muslims, like every other New Yorkers, actually have their safety and their equality and their respect be recognized by the leader of the state. We did not see that from Andrew Cuomo tonight.
Now, another point that Andrew Cuomo, again, he used his Q&A portion to ask Whitney Tilson, someone that is polling at the bottom of this group, to ask him to talk about your own fiscal policies and how you'd be able to pay for it. Talk to me about that.
Honestly, this reporter's asking good questions. Like, I think this reporter is a little bit Zohran curious, if you know. I think I know who she's ranking on her ballot based on the questions she's asking.
How would you convince Albany to pass a tax on the wealthy when the governor has blatantly said, I do not support that?
That's a good question.
You know, I think it was telling that Andrew Cuomo would rather ask Whitney Tilson a question than me, and ultimately it's very illustration of the fact that he's scared. He's scared of the fact that where he once had a 40-point lead in the final round, that we have now brought that down to 2 points. And ultimately, this is the same governor who found $959 million to give Elon Musk in tax breaks for his Buffalo Billion Pet Project, a project that Cuomo promised New Yorkers would yield $30 of economic benefit for every dollar invested, and what we got in return was 54 cents. He has always been able to find money.
I don't even think it's going to be a close election at this point. This is starting to feel like a Mamdani blowout.
For the wealthiest in this state and in this country. What he has been unwilling to do.
I don't think it will be. Everyone still needs to go out and vote, and anyone you know in New York, call him up, tell him to get the hell out there and do something about this. But I don't see how this can be close. He's so good. He's just so good.
For his Buffalo Billion Pet Project, a project that Cuomo promised New Yorkers would yield $30 of economic benefit for every dollar invested, and what we got in return was 54 cents. He has always been able to find money for the wealthiest in this state and in this country. What he has been unwilling to do, however, is to tax those same wealthy to fund the very kind of public schools that he started.
That's kind of crazy that he can give $900 million in tax rebates to Elon Musk, but then he turns around and says, well, if we try to hire more teachers, we'll have to destroy the rest of the budget. Also, we're going to hire 1 million more cops, but we can't afford teachers.
For so long.
Now, what will you focus on now as early voting is about to start? We have a couple of days, a couple of weeks left until Election Day. What's your plan, and what more do you need to do to build out your base, right? I know you poll very well with young people, very well with those in hippie Brooklyn. How are you going to continue your outreach to Black New Yorkers, to Latino New Yorkers?
You know, I think you can see in our polling that our support is rising across the board. We're proud to be the only campaign other than Andrew Cuomo to have cleared double digits with every single ethnic group in the city. And ultimately what we're seeing is that the work we need to do is the work that we've already done. We just have to keep doing it. That means building our 36,000 volunteer team, knocking on nearly 1 million doors, and making clear that the most expensive city in the United States has to become affordable. We're the campaign that's going to do so.
All right, thank you so much. We'll leave it at that. And so, Bobby, just going back to you in-house, talking to Zohran Mamdani, someone that has polled consistently.
Zohran just has all the right answers and a nice smile. You know,
in second place behind Andrew Cuomo, and he's going to continue to do outreach. Again, we heard from other candidates tonight. I'm going to send it back to you.
All right, Bernadette Hogan at John Jay College, thank you for that report. We are now going to go out to Brooklyn. Our Kelly Mena has been standing by in Flatbush at a watch party hosted by the Campaign Finance Board. Kelly, I think you were able to find some undecided voters earlier in the night. Were you able to get back with them and see whether they had any change of opinion by the end of the night?
Bobby, I was able to find them again and get another one who actually switched their final decision. I have them standing right next to me right now. We spoke to Kayla earlier, and this is Andre standing next to her. Kayla, you told us earlier today that you didn't know who you were voting for. After watching that 2-hour debate, what are your thoughts, and what will your slate look like?
Well, Kelly, I have a lot of thoughts right now. I definitely have a better idea of what I'm looking for. I will say Adrienne, she impressed me a lot as a black woman who was poised, confident. Many times she said that she was already doing many of the things that they were asking, and that impressed me a lot. As I mentioned also, I follow AOC. She did talk about Mamdani a lot, and so that is also someone who I have my eyes on, but definitely this has inspired me to research a little bit more, but Adrienne impressed me a lot.
And you mentioned...
Ooh, sounds like Zohran's getting ranked. Adrienne has no chance, so that's a Zohran vote.
AOC has endorsed Zohran Mamdani. Does that naturally want you to put him on your slate and vote for him?
It makes me interested, intrigued, but I will say that I'm the kind of person that likes to research a lot more before making a final decision. So that does put him on my radar, but I still want to research a lot more.
And what did you think about Cuomo's performance tonight? Would you rank him at all?
No, I wouldn't. I was amused. But
That's all we fucking need, folks. That's all we fucking need is no, I'm not ranking Cuomo. That's all we fucking need for Zohran to be in there.
The way that it went, I was amused because a lot of them, a lot of the candidates had a lot to say about him and to bring out about him, and his responses really and truly just proved more to me that he's not someone I would look for.
Hey, and Andre, we spoke to you earlier. You said that you're switching what your slate looks like. You're now putting Zelnor Myrie first instead of Zohran Mamdani and putting Zohran Mamdani second. Tell us why you came to that decision after watching the debate.
That's fine.
I still like Zohran Mamdani. Is like top. He's a great progressive, but I think the answers that Myrie Zelnor said today was very specific about black people in particular. That like I took to heart because I feel like black people have not been pushed to the forefront in New York City, and we are the heart of New York City as a majority, especially in Brooklyn. So I just rank him a little bit above Mamdani right now.
Was there any specific answer that stood out for you when it came to Zelnor Myrie that you think is
Again, that's fine. That's fine. It's a ranked choice. Like Mamdani's got
the top
it.
issue for you going to the voting booth?
I think he mentioned childcare a lot, but also he brought up a lot about Prospect Park, which
So,
is like one of
so I know this is anecdotal. Like this is literally just 2 voters, but again, Mamdani's surging in polls, already leading Cuomo. This was a day ago, right? Yeah, over a day ago now, a day and a half ago, pretty much almost. And like it was pretty clear from that what we just watched and what we're hearing here that nobody's impressed by Cuomo. They're at a watch party, so they didn't just watch it by themselves. These two were like, this is more than speaking for 2 people, I think. This is also a bit, like, it reflects the whole social gathering there. It reflects the vibes of their whole watch party. So, you know, if people aren't thinking Zohran #1, that's fine. Who cares? But if people are thinking let's not rank Cuomo, then this is going to improve more. I think it's 35-31. It's narrowly within the margin of error, so it's still super close, but I think more than anything, that debate is going to push more people to not rank Cuomo, and that's all we need for Zohran to win, is for people to not rank Cuomo.
the best points out here, and that's like
And to rank Zohran, obviously.
he's a Caribbean local guy from Flatbush too, so I've always ranked him, but I always thought that as a progressive, Mamdani was better. But he spoke to my heart today, Mr. Zelnor, you know, Myrie.
Would you ever rank Cuomo on your slate?
He's #5. He's the last one, dead last.
Thank you so much. So you heard it right there. Not big fans of Cuomo here, but of Adrienne Adams and of Zelnor Myrie. Early voting starts on Saturday, so we'll see if tonight's debate performance makes a difference for many of those candidates. Back to you, Bobby.
All right, Kelly, thank you so much. I'm going to go back to my
Interesting.
panel. It seemed like for the first good chunk of the debate, the sort of central contrast was Cuomo talking about his experience and portraying Mamdani not just as inexperienced, but as dangerously inexperienced. And he kept bringing up this example of Donald Trump.
And then bringing up unity.
In 2020 during the George Floyd protest, wanting to send federal troops into cities across the country. And, you know, the way Cuomo tells the story, Trump backed down from sending troops to New York because, you know, he was tough in the face, of Trump's threats, which I don't know, how much truth there is to the way that Cuomo's telling the story. But I mean, that is sort of the central tension. I'll go to you first, Greg, between Mamdani and Cuomo.
Even these media people don't like. It's their job to kill Zohran's campaign, but they just hate Cuomo so much they can't bring themselves to be like have sympathy or express any sympathy for him.
Is it experience or is it youth, and what are the virtues of each?
I mean, I think we all know what the deal is with that. Andrew was the governor, he was the attorney general, he was the HUD secretary, so I don't see how anybody can say he doesn't have experience. Mamdani has very little experience. This is all true, but I don't even think that this is how people are going to vote, because I think it's more about personality. And the one thing that I got a huge kick out of was you have Mamdani going at Cuomo about he's got Trump billionaires giving him money. Right? So what does Cuomo say about that? He immediately says, I have more unions than you do, or than anybody else does. And then he goes at him about DoorDash. That was a good one. So DoorDash, this is, $1 million was given, which is by far the biggest donation in any of this, to Andrew Cuomo's Independent Expenditure Committee, which is supporting Andrew Cuomo. Cuomo doesn't have any direct, or is not supposed to have any direct connection to it. So DoorDash gives all this money, and Mamdani's take on that is that Cuomo's in DoorDash's pocket. And so what does he say when they start asking about the, out of control e-bikes? Cuomo says, we need to hold the apps responsible for the tickets and to have them license the drivers. So I think that what's happening here is that's just a pure class argument that they were trying to go at each other, and it wasn't as simple as Mamdani wanted it to be. But Cuomo also has to explain to people why he got $1 million from DoorDash.
So we're running short on time. I'm going to go around with the three of you and just get maybe tell me what moment from the debate you think is going to leave a lasting impression. Like, what was the most memorable moment that you think people are going to be talking about as we head into Election Day?
I think there were some pretty spicy exchanges throughout, but I'm thinking, listening to Greg, about how Mamdani responded to that attack from Cuomo. If Cuomo wants to play up his experience, then Mamdani's trying to characterize it as baggage, and then went on that list of, I never respond in disgrace. I think it was a pretty effective back and forth between the two of them, but I do think it's clear that Cuomo brings a whole decades of experience to the table.
Ben and Courtney, I was going to give you guys a chance, but we are actually running so short on time. We're going to have to cut off the panel as we head to our next half hour of programming. Lady. That's going to do it for tonight.
All right, that's going to do it for tonight. We're done for tonight. Just remember, anyone let's do it. Let's do it. We got to do it in New York, happening in New York near you in the next couple weeks, I think. Yeah, I mean, voting starts tomorrow now, I think, early voting, I don't know, and then ends on the 24th, I think. That's the election day. Get out there, tell your people to knock on doors, tell your people not to rank Cuomo and to give this man a chance, because look at him. He's all right.